Meeting order of the regular meeting for June 6, 2016 of the City Council of the City of Crescent City. Do we have anything to report out of our closed session?
Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Could you please take roll?
Councilmember Hawley?
Here.
Councilmember Murray?
Here.
Councilmember Short?
Here.
Pro Tem Inscore?
Here.
Mayor Gastineau?
I am here, and Pro Tem Inscore will lead us in the flag salute.
And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Okay. We have no acknowledgments tonight. Excuse me. We do have 6 items on our consent calendar. Those items are 1, May 16th, 2016 council meeting minutes, May 23rd council budget workshop minutes, warrants, claims, list, payroll report, and board, state, and community corrections funding, and general election consolidation and declaration of date. Is there any public comment on our consent calendar? Seeing no public comment, bring it back to the council.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can you please pull the vote?
Councilmember Hawley?
Yes?
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Inscore?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
Yes. Yeah, we did ask our council to report out for closed session. Man.
Do you have something you wanted to share?
Sorry, I missed it. No. They're like my classes. They don't want to, not listening. Horrible. Okay, so we're on to item number 7, reports and presentations, and we have a presentation by John Pritchett, Del Norte Ambulance, on the state of EMS in Del Norte County. Mr. Pritchett, would you want to come forward? Introduce that young man next to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Hawley leading off will be the Mayor Gastineau. Former Mayor Hawley, everybody. This is Ron Sandler. He is paramedic and president of Del Norte Ambulance.
All right. Speaking to that microphone.
Hello, how are you all tonight? Good seeing y'all. As paramedic and CEO of Del Norte Ambulance for the last 30 years, I've like to thank you for this opportunity to come up here and present this to you. When it comes to EMS and what's going on in the community and our country as a whole, I can go on for hours, but John gave me this piece of paper to make sure that we stayed within the 3-minute time frame that you've given us. So I'll try to keep it to the list there. May marked EMS week, and in that time we normally go before the Board of Supervisors, give them an update of what's going on. This year we thought it'd be good to come talk with you and let you know what's going on also. There's a lot of changes happening in EMS, both California, nationally, and locally. We've proud to say that EMS in our community is good. It's getting better despite the ups and downs of healthcare in the industry, in the state and at the national level. City residents and visitors are calling on us more than ever before, and that creates a good news, bad news situation, ensuring that we're able to get all the units out there that are needed and at the same time not overstaff and cause a financial burden. We believe this indicates a high level of trust that the community has had with the service that's being provided by our local first responders, firefighters, emergency room, and Del Norte Ambulance itself. We continue to see better lines of communications between us and various agencies. Training continues to be very effective and continues to grow with more on the way. Mutual aid agreements continue to work well in our community and within the region. And we believe that there's a better community understanding of what's involved with our service and the countywide emergency services. I think that all of us know the pressure and the dedication that the Del Norte Sheriff's Dispatch goes through on a daily basis, and their devotion really makes us be able to get where we're going. We all know the devotion that the many volunteer firefighters put out, going out all hours, all weather. And the community knows and respects that our EMTs and paramedics face those long shifts away from home. And I think that's all part of why we're getting called more regularly. May 21st, we hosted the second annual First Responder Appreciation Day. It was a great success. We had some hands-on training, some skills. We had about 15 different agencies representing there, telling about what's going on in the community. We had some outside resources come in and do some training and stuff. And it was a great day. And afterwards, we opened it up to the public, and the public was able to come on in and get a look at all the equipment that's serving our community. As you may know, that this year we purchased 4 Lucas devices, the CPR assist device. It provides state-of-the-art CPR for as long as needed. Recently was deployed, and the paramedic reported that it worked perfectly, that the scene was really mild. They were able to do everything they had to do. The thing actually worked for an hour and a half while they were at the hospital trying to do CPR to revive the person. So it's a great piece of equipment, and I'm glad to see that there's 3 of them in the field right now. The firefighters have gone through an extensive training course on it, and they're ready to deploy them in a moment's notice. So that's a great outcome there. And while I've talked about all the great stuff that's going on in our community, not everything's perfect, and when it comes to not everything being perfect, I give you John Pritchett.
Thank you, Mr. Sandler. Council members, as you said, EMS in our community is solid, but there are some challenges that we face in the near future, ranging from changes in our local medical situation to new state regulations to unforeseen impacts of the Affordable Care Act. But perhaps the biggest issue facing our company is one that every employer in California is facing: a dramatic rise in employee costs. As you know, Del Norte Ambulance, our crews do not work 8-hour shifts, they work 20-plus hour shifts. That means that not only is our straight costs going to climb, but our overtime costs are going to skyrocket. Now, as you may know, this past month we notified the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors that we will be requesting a rate increase in the near future to help keep up with the many increased costs that we face. It's worth noting this will be the first rate increase request by Del Norte Ambulance since 2010. Now, at the same time, the ambulance industry, and in fact the entire medical community in the state of California, continues to struggle with unfairly low reimbursement rates for Medi-Cal patients. Medi-Cal pays approximately 10% of an ambulance bill. And please note that Medi-Cal rates not only have not increased over the past 2 decades, they've actually decreased in that time. Now, this forces ambulance companies to cost shift to other non-governmental payers, those with private insurance and those with no insurance whatsoever. Last month, the nation's biggest ambulance provider, AMR, announced that it will be discontinuing ambulance service in Tulare County. It specifically cited the unreasonable low Medi-Cal rates for its decision. Now, moving on, the Veterans Administration remains, for lack of a better term, a battleground for medical providers, not only ambulance companies, but hospitals, private doctors, pretty much anybody involved in the medical community that deals with the VA faces a battle trying to get payment. Payments are slow, sometimes non-existent. Billing is difficult, and often, we believe, deliberately incorrectly handled specifically by the VA office in San Francisco. We're working with U.S. Representative Jared Huffman's office on this issue, as well as Del Norte County's Veteran Service Officer Aaron Goodwin, who has been a very positive factor in helping not only our veterans, but those firms that serve our veterans. Another challenge we are seeing was one that's come to light over the past 6 months. Now, Medicare has done something we and other healthcare providers believe is unconscionable. It has determined that mental health patients in crisis, meaning a danger to themselves or others, should be transported to higher levels of care not by an ambulance with a trained medical attendant at their side, but by a law enforcement vehicle. Now, let me be clear on this, as there was some confusion regarding this. Del Norte Ambulance continues to transport mental health patients, including those in need of higher levels of care, taking patients during their time of need to Redding, Yuba City, Santa Rosa, St. Helena, and even Sacramento. As Mr. Sandler said when Medicare first made this decision, these patients are medical patients. They're not criminals. And we're working with the American Ambulance Association and with our local mental health department, and we are strenuously appealing Medicare's decision to the highest levels. Now, another challenge we face is one familiar to most in this room, and that's bringing in and keeping good people in our community. Recruiting to Del Norte County is tough, and finding highly trained and highly sought EMTs and paramedics remain a challenge. Del Norte Ambulance started programs approximately 2 years ago to home grow our entry-level employees, but not only entry-level employees, but also paramedics. Our Explorer program, post 911, has already graduated a pair of EMTs into full-time employees, Devin Degler and Amanda Vargas. Overall, we have 8 Del Norte High School graduates working in the field. We also began a program to home grow paramedics by helping Del Norte Ambulance's EMT1s to go to school and receive the training that they need. The process requires about 1,200 hours of classroom time and another 500 or so hours in supervised field work. All in all, it takes about a year, and not everybody makes it. But however, we're very proud to announce that our latest success, a young man who grew up here in Del Norte County, started out as just a driver and has worked his way out, and he's now a full-fledged paramedic, and his name is Chaz Davis, and we're very proud of him. And with that, Mr. Sandler and I are open to any questions from the council.
Questions?
I heard you mention mutual aid agreements, so can you tell us who the agreements are with?
Actually, we have a pretty far-reaching mutual aid agreements. We have one with CalOR, we have one with City Ambulance of Eureka, we have one with Arcata Ambulance, Mercy Flights, AMR, and that's just in the immediate circle around us. Then we have PUPA, and there's also a regional EMS.
That makes so much
liaison.
sense. I was really excited to hear about that. You might have had them for quite a while, but the city fire department has that too throughout the county. I'm sure you know that, so I'm really happy to hear about that. And I recently heard about the health career pathway that the Workforce Center has, and they're located at RHS, and I don't know if you're working with them.
Yes.
Okay, great, because that's another way to get homegrown kids to get the education they need to be working for your company too, so.
Absolutely.
We had a meeting this past week with Rachel.
Rachel, right.
And I talked to her Saturday at the health fair, and we're excited about partnering and finding ways that we can support them and they can support us.
Yes, I met with Rachel too, so that's how I learned about it, and it's a great program, and it's a great career that you offer young people here in our community, so I'm glad that you're doing that. Thank you.
There's a lot of health opportunities in this area, so
Yes.
it's good to see. As far as ambulance goes, if any of you'd like to come see the units or come right along or even just follow along on calls, we're happy to set that up for you. Happy to show you what we do.
How is you guys' staffing so far right now?
It's a continual roller coaster like every other agency in the community. You know, one day we have more people than we know what to do with, and the next day we're looking for people. You know, we have a high bar that we set, so we just don't, you know, the days of, you know, you fog a mirror, get on, are long gone. We haven't done that kind of process in 25 years or so. So yeah, we would rather kick them loose quickly, and if they're not a fit for the community, then you know, it's better that they go where they enjoy being, and we get good quality people that want to do some good stuff.
Understandable. Thank you.
You know, your rate increases that you mentioned, is that you're just talking about the base rate for the BLS and ALS ambulances, or are you talking about something else?
No, that's it. It would be the base rates and the other incidental charges associated with it.
Okay.
You know, gentlemen, I was thinking about the concerns regarding having ambulances take 5150 cases south. And I don't think that the sheriff's office is overly employed. I don't know that they have, I guess they have the ability, but whether or not they have the manpower to do that, I don't know. So I guess my question to you is there some political assistance we can give you in order to advocate for some kind of a appellate change of some kind?
I'm sure there's going to be a point where we're going to be coming back to you in the city or to the county requesting letters of support to from what we understand, it's actually going to take an act of legislation to make a law in California that says they have to go by ambulance. Oregon recently did that, and up until then they were going back to patrol cars. So now it's an ambulance that takes patients.
And they have even fewer law enforcement personnel there, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we're now on to our communications. On the agenda here, this public comment period. Any member of the audience is invited to address City Council on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the City of Crescent City. Comments of public interest or on matters appearing on the agenda are accepted. Note, however, that the council is not able to undertake extended discussion or act on non-agendized items. Such items can be referred to staff for an appropriate action, which may include placement on a future agenda. Any comments that are not at the microphone are out of order and will not be part of the public record. After receiving recognition from myself, please state your name and city or county residency for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment? Amazing. Okay, I see no public comment. I'll close public comment, and next on our agenda are public hearings, and we have 2 of them today. Our first one, number 8, is the housing element. The howling element, yeah. That was the noise ordinance from a couple years ago. Okay, is a recommendation to adopt resolution number 2016, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Crescent City adopting the 2014 to 2019 General Plan Housing Element Update. All right, this Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. And again, we're here to discuss the adoption of 2014-2019 housing element. So I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. Feel free to ask questions as we go through the presentation. So just briefly, what is a housing element? Is one of the 7 state mandated elements of the general plan, but is the only element that is required to be updated every 5 years. And as we later on we'll move through, we can actually go to an 8-year process, so I'll go into that a little further detail. Plans for the provision of housing for a variety of income levels. Assesses housing needs at the local level and requires review and certification by the state, which is the HCD. Housing element update process. The first phase is a public participation program, which we actually held a series of public hearings, one at the Planning Commission back in October, and then a second one with the council in November. Phase 2 is review the existing conditions, which we've gone through this process. And of course, we've already prepared the draft housing element and done the environmental review, which I'll discuss that at the end of the presentation as well. And of course, the last portion will be to adopt the housing element. Streamline review process. If you'll recall, we had a flurry of zoning code amendments that came through, a lot with the SB2 and attached to some other legislative requirements. Since we met all of those, we were actually able to qualify for the streamlined review process through HCD. And so what that means is this is an update only, it's not a complete rewrite. So what HCD has recognized, state has recognized that a lot of portions of housing elements, they're not out of date after 5 years. Majority of it's still good. So what we go through and we look at, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and then any, additions that we'll have. So that's what we'll focus on tonight. Some recent legislation in the last few years that applies to our housing elements. SB 812 means that every jurisdiction has to do an assessment of persons with developmental disabilities and their housing needs. SB 375, this again allows jurisdictions that have a 4-year transportation plan update that they can move their housing element review to 8 years. We didn't qualify for that this cycle, but the next cycle we will. So hopefully we'll be able to move to an 8-year rather than a 5-year review through the next cycle. SB2, of course, you're all familiar with that. That's the zoning for emergency shelters and transitional and supportive housing. Then AB 2634, again, what this said was that all jurisdictions need to also plan for extremely low-income housing needs. And then AB 2511, which is the anti-NIMBY and no net loss, which means you can't pass any ordinances to prevent low-income housing from coming into any zoning districts, and you can't rezone or change the allowable units for projects that have already been approved. Implementation challenges. Of course, you always have challenges when you're trying to develop housing. Limited resources, obviously, loss of federal and state funding for us. And if you've gone through the actual analysis, the loss of RDA was huge for us. We lost almost $1 million in funding, set-aside funding for low-income housing. And of course, market-based difficulties, that could be the cost of land and the cost of development. So housing element contents, our housing element has evaluation of the previous housing element. That's the first section you'll see. And you also see policy programs to promote housing opportunities and meet regional housing needs allocation. I'll discuss that further as we move through this. Opportunities and constraints on housing development, and then demographic and housing needs assessments. And I'll touch briefly on each of those. The RHNA, which is a regional housing needs allocation. This is a needs allocation. It's a process that ensures local governments provide sufficient, appropriately zoned land for new housing to address projected population growth. The RNHA is based on Department of Finance population projections and regional population forecasts used in preparing regional transportation plans. So what the RHNA is basically, it's our share, especially within the county. It gets split up for us. Delaware County will get their share, and then we get our share as a city. And this is what HCD's come up with. It decided that this is the amount of housing that we need to try to provide within the different income levels over the next 5 years. And so this is what our, our new needs assessment was. It was 77 units. You'll see a total of 79 because we also said that we would at least rehabilitate at least 2 units. But compared to the last cycle, I think it was something like 314 units. And what the HCD stated this time around is because of the downturn in the economy that they were lowering all the numbers. And I don't know, but I've never really agreed with that 300 number. If you look at larger jurisdictions, I mean, pretty good-sized cities, some of them don't even reach that 300 unit level. And I'll go back, and again, you'll see how it's broken out with between extremely low, very low, and of course your low to moderate, and all the way up. The AMI is the area median income, so that's what they base that on. So, for example, the extremely low is at 30% or less of that AMI, and so that's how that works out. Some of the accomplishments for the last cycle. Of course, we passed emergency shelter zoning, the transitional supportive housing zoning, regional accommodations. And also, we continue partnership with the Housing Authority to manage our housing stock. Again, some of their accomplishments, we didn't get any low-income housing units developed, but we had some substantial redevelopment. And one of them would be the Surf Apartments, or rehabilitation, I should say. So again, Surf Apartments, I think in 2013, it had a complete remodel of the entire building. So that saved 56 low senior housing units, low income. Again, we also had the Crescent City Senior Apartments that's located over there on Oregon Street. Again, they went through an entire remodel of their property. And again, that was another 38 units. Some kind of proposed development, and you'll hear a little more about this one coming up next. To try to meet our regional housing needs allocation, we have the 27-unit senior housing project proposed, and we also have, and that was the Harbor Point Apartments, and then we also have the Delaware Point Apartment project, and this one will be coming back, I believe, in September. This is up to a 70-unit development.
Where is that located, Eric? Is
I don't know if you remember back in 2006, they came forward with this project. This is over there by Joe Hamilton School,
that's
that
what I
5
thought.
acres back
Okay,
there. So,
all right.
But they are coming back. They want to resurrect this and
Okay, great.
close this project.
That's what I was
again.
hoping. Thank you.
And again, this will be just for low-income housing, not specific to seniors or any other population. Again, 2014-2019 draft housing element demographics and housing needs analysis. It was updated on, of course, population, employment trends and projections, household and housing stock characteristics, housing stock conditions, housing cost and affordability, special needs population, assisted housing at risk conversion to market rate, and I'll touch on a few of the statistics as I go through. Obviously, there's quite a few of them in the housing element, so. Oops. There you go. Population income, overall there was a slight decrease in population, including group quarters and households. So what that means for us, we have households, which is kind of your general population, and your group quarters. For us, that means Pelican Bay State Prison for the most part. You know, they're annexed in, so their population counts in our overall population. So I think a lot of the increase and decrease is associated with that. But we did see a slight increase in just households, so it means there's a little bit of an increase, actually, just city population. And then overall increase, projected increase in the county from 2020 to 2050, that there should be an overall increase through that time span in the county. There were not any population increases or forecasts, I should say, for the city itself, just for the county, so that's what we included there. So then you can see there, so you had a pretty good increase from 2000 to 2010, but then from 2000, around 10 to 2013, we saw another dip in the population. And we talk about income categories. Locally, our median income, and this is for households, not individuals, is $29,700. Approximately 40% of households have incomes at or below the low income level, which that threshold is at $24,999. And about 60% at or above the moderate, which is roughly $35,000. And then overall, for the city, the overall poverty rate, and this is for individuals, this is individuals living in households, is about 34.6%. So it's pretty substantial. You can see it for a community, actually. So we have a graph displaying that for Crescent City income groups. And again, this is households. And so you can see, you know, from the moderate, but then low, very low, extremely low, you know, almost 50% of the population is living, you know, below that moderate range. Good news, over the last 10 years, we actually saw a substantial increase in individuals living at that moderate to above moderate range, and a slight decrease in the low range. But obviously, we still have some significant challenges. Housing costs and conditions. Majority of our housing stock, over 50% of it, is comprised of single-family units. Approximately 70% of housing stock constructed prior to 1980. And how this becomes significant, if they start looking at the age of units, really from 1960 and earlier. You look at where your percentage is there, and that kind of gives you a good idea of what type of rehabilitation, you know, some of your housing stock's looking at. Some of your older units obviously are going to require more rehabilitation. Then we conducted a 2015 survey, housing condition survey, and it indicated about 68% of the housing stock is in fair condition or good condition, but that also indicates that roughly 30% is in need of some rehabilitation. And again, approximately 800 lower income households were overpaying or overburdened. So what this means is that at least 30% of their income was going to pay for their rents or their house payments. That would qualify as you as overpaying. If it was 35% or more, then those individuals were considered overburdened on what they're paying out for rent or for their house payments. Again, this is going to have average home sale prices from 2015. So you can see kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, the one bedrooms. These are really the houses that could be affordable for your low to your extremely low population. You're roughly around the $50,000 range. But you can see how it really changes. You know, when you're talking about a one bedroom house, so I mean, think about that. If you're in the lower range and you have a family of 3 or 4 and all you can afford is a one bedroom house, you're really limited. And then, of course, as it goes up to 5 bedrooms, it increases substantially. So this is kind of a chart showing the income, your income that you bring in versus your housing stock. So, for example, just looking at the average price, list price of $59,000 or $59,000 for an average price in your lower end range, you'd have to have an income of at least $17,000 to be able to afford a home in that price range. And you can see as it goes up, you start getting above the $200,000 range, it goes up substantially as well. Again, Crescent City housing stocks, this is for rentals, and you can see kind of the low rental range in the blue and the high in the red. So you can see as you get from the 1, 2, all the way up to the 3 bedrooms. So if you have larger families, you get a pretty wide range of rental costs, and they can go up significantly. Again, affordable rents by household. So this, again, is looking at your income versus what they're paying out in rent. So a person with a monthly income of about $1,000, one person can afford about $300 in rent per month. You can see it's pretty limited. That's a very limiting factor for folks. So as you get up, as you have more persons per your household, you're obviously able to afford a lot less. And so, again, when you hit that extremely low and very low income levels, and even low all the way down to extremely low, it's pretty significant. And then you can see in this chart, if you look at the households that are really overpaying their rental costs, or paying more for housing than what they're bringing in, what they can afford, it really, again, is very skewed towards that lower end of the income level. Special needs housing. What we saw, when we're talking about special needs populations, we're really talking about we're talking about seniors, and we're also talking about disabled persons. So again, we saw a significant increase in seniors, especially in the 55 to 65 range from 2000 to 2010. I also saw, I think pretty much saw an increase all the way across the board, all the way up to the 75 and older. And so what that tells us, it really is, you saw a big spike in the baby boomers that are really starting to retire and hitting that age group. And it's gone up significantly, which indicates there's a real need for senior housing, and it's going to continue. It's not going away. Again, we indicated about 987 persons with disabilities living in the city, and that's any disability. That could be from, you have an impairment in your hand or developmental disability. But then we talk about persons with developmental disabilities is about 315 persons living within the city. That's, the state defines a developmental disability as any person that has acquired this disability prior to the age of 18 and will substantially impair their ability, to function throughout the rest of their life. So again, here's a quick graph of the Crescent City senior population. And again, you can see that big spike there in that 55 to 64 category. Again, of course, and also an increase from 65 to 74, as well as the slight increase at the 75 and over. Again, Crescent City disabled population. This is persons with disabilities. You can see it really spikes there in the 18 to 64 range. And that's kind of significant too, because if you look at that in that population there, that's, a lot of those folks too are also at your, at the age group where they should be working. So looking at jobs and the economics there really has a significant factor. Again, and then here's a graph for the developmentally disabled population. And again, we've got a pretty large population in the city from that 22 to 51 year range. And then of course 0 to 13 is pretty significant. Of course that age group will continue to go through. Moving over to governmental constraints. So what this housing element says, each jurisdiction has to analyze the governmental constraints, and these could be roadblocks for development, anything that could hinder the development of low-income housing. And a lot of that, again, is land use controls, again, is our zoning, again, site improvements and fees. But we found through our housing element that our fees are very reasonable. The time frame to move projects through, we can go pretty fast. We don't have a lot of governmental constraints here in the city, Crescent City. So that moves us into goals, policies, and programs. And so again, we have our stated goals, which are our objectives, policies under those goals, and then the programs. And the programs are really the actions that we're going to take to implement the policies. And so this is the part where we really get into the significant changes in the housing element, other than updating all of the statistics that I just went through. This is the part where we actually made the changes from the previous housing element to the new housing element. And so these are changes that we're proposing. I will add that HCD has already gone through and reviewed these changes and has actually sent us a conditional letter of approval. So again, changes, goals, policies, and programs chapter, evaluation of 2009-2014 housing element. So that's where we look at the previous housing element, and we look at what programs and activities actually worked and were successful, which ones weren't successful at all, where we would just delete, and then what programs that we need to implement to further our objectives. Again, and these are all numbered through the housing element. Action B1, 2, and B6, 1 were merged together. Again, this is to support and encourage the development of housing projects. These two were merged together because they really had a lot of similar features. They weren't very dissimilar, so what we did, we just took the two and combined them in the new housing element. Action C11 will be deleted. This was the housing rehabilitation program. The city just doesn't have the funding currently to provide that program. The county did have a rehabilitation program, which in the past we would refer people to the county, but unfortunately, I think in 2014, their program was through CDBG funds, and I believe it was I can't remember the exact funding source that they're using, but CDBG changed the way they could use those funds, so they were no longer able to continue their program. So in 2014, they ceased their housing rehabilitation program as well.
Should we can just reintroduce that component if we got funding again?
Certainly,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Then policy A7 and action A7.1 will be deleted. This is offset of development fees. And really what that was set for was to try to promote new development of low-income housing. We really don't have a mechanism for just completely deleting the fees. You know, we have to charge some fees for our permit processing and those types of things. So we're just delete that program off. Our fees are not, they're not astronomical, and they're not really a burden on developers. Action D1.1, amend zoning code to allow emergency shelters in the C2 zone by use permit. That was proposed by the council, so it's something that we're saying that we'll implement. I believe we have till about 2017. We say we'll pass that line. Action D1.2, update zoning code to define and allow for SROs. Those are single room occupancy units with a conditional use permit in the residential professional zone. In the previous element, we stated that we were going to do that in the R3 zone. Didn't make a whole lot of sense because in the R3 zone, you'd really be looking at development of new units, and for that's pretty big down south in some of the larger jurisdictions where they're completely built out and they need the smaller housing for more people. For us, we propose a residential professional zone because we have some older motels in those districts, which have already been kind of converted to single room occupancy units. So this is really an effort to bring them along, to really convert those to real single room occupancy units and get those folks you know, some better conditions over there, as well as bring those property owners into compliance with current zoning law, basically. You know. Action D.1.3, amend the zoning code to comply with health and safety code sections. They are there to allow employee housing for farm workers and other employees for 6 persons or fewer. The same way as single-family residential dwellings are allowed in zones along single-family residential structures. Again, this is legislation that was passed. We don't have any land zoned for agriculture in the city, but we're still required to implement this program. So we'll also be amending our zoning code for that as well. Action D.1.4, adopt a policy detailing the emergency shelter security plan, non-discretionary submittal process, and the contents of the security plan. So when we proposed this to HCD, they went back and looked at our zoning for emergency shelters. The one thing they didn't like was the submittal of the security plan to the chief of police. They felt that it was kind of left open for discretionary review. They were afraid that their concern was that somebody would submit the plan to the chief. The chief would say, well, that's not enough. You need to add this, add this, add this, which then becomes a discretionary approval, which we really can't do. So what they're asking us to do, what we'll do here is amend the zoning code just to say that they shall submit the security plan, and it should address these elements, but we won't have the ability to go back and say, you know, you need to add more things to that plan. Again, action D.1.5 to allow additional flexibility for shelter occupants and allow greater variation in size of shelters. The city will amend the zoning code to extend the maximum stay to 60 days and to increase the maximum number of beds allowed without discretionary review to 30. If you recall, before it was up to almost 30 days. But state law allows up to 6 months. So you know, ACD had a little bit of concern. We also had received some comments from the public that didn't feel that was enough, what we were proposing. So we're now proposing up to 60 days stay within a year. and up to 30 beds. Before we had 10 beds. We've identified, we don't really have a real number of the actual homeless population in the city. Just through kind of estimates through law enforcement, it's probably around 40 or 50. But what the HCD kind of came back and said, well, if you're only allowing 10 beds and you're saying you have 50 people, then you need to provide 5 shelters with 10 beds. Our response back was, well, they're probably not all going to be staying at the same time. So we kind of came to this compromise where we just amend the zoning code, if approved by the council, that we would allow up to 30 beds per shelter. Action F.2.1, the Crescent City Housing Authority provides the public with housing discrimination complaint forms. They also provide assistance when is needed in completing and submitting the paperwork to Fair Housing. This is something we amended some of the language in the previous housing element, just to kind of bring it up to date. We're just missing some components. But the Housing Authority does do all of these things already, so we're just restating that in the housing element. Again, so those are all the significant changes that are being proposed. Any questions on those? Okay.
Just one, so the shelter, it would be changed to 60 days, but would that be like not necessarily continuous, or would it matter? I mean, if somebody was in the shelter for...
I think what we previously stated was it could be continuous or just within, I think what we'll state is just within a 1-year period.
Okay, so cumulative for 1 year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Again, Environmental Planning Commission and ACD review. We have prepared a negative declaration for this housing element update. Really kind of the crux to that is we're not proposing, although we have some slight modifications to some of our zoning code, there are no modifications to our land use plan. Therefore, it's not going to have a significant impact on the environment. Again, any future projects will be subjected to a separate CEQA review. So if anybody's bringing any low-income housing projects forward, they will be reviewed, on their own merits, aside from the housing element. Again, we received conditional approval letter from HCD on April 27, 2016, and the Planning Commission passed resolution PC 2016-01 on May 26, 2016. We're in that resolution. They asked that this be moved forward. They recommended this be moved forward to the council for adoption of the negative declaration and the 2014-2019 housing element update. That completes my presentation. I'll answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Taylor, I was wondering about the statistical analysis and whether or not it takes into account that we have a large housing authority that provides income for people. I mean, it looks like it'd be a real difficult environment to live in, but at the same time, we're providing an augmentation.
I mean, that is mentioned, and it doesn't really, the statistical analysis doesn't take that into account, but I think when you look at the statistics, it really, it sheds a light on that, on the service that the housing authority is providing at 590 vouchers to assist these folks in their housing.
Right.
I mean, because there's a huge income gap, and of course, there's a huge difference in folks' income and what they can actually afford on rent. So it provides a huge service for our community.
And I think the other piece of your report that I found particularly interesting is I did not know that almost 70% of the housing that we have in our area is renter occupied. That
Correct.
only 30% of the houses are owner occupied. And
There's
then,
a large number of rental units.
Yeah, and then you look at who overpays in their housing costs. And apparently the renters overpay significantly at a significantly higher rate than the owners.
Homeowners,
And
correct.
it's too bad there's not some kind of a program to get people to own, I guess, is where I'm going with that, because it seems to be better all around. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. Thank you.
Somebody else? On page A18, where it talks about key services, I know the last time we reviewed this, Community Assistance Network, they no longer have the canned cottages, for example. And I think that their services are a little bit narrower than what what is shown on the chart here, because they don't have the can cottages.
We'll go back and look at that one part, but we did update that from your comments from the last meeting.
Yeah,
And as well, there was...
it's still
so-
showing that
Okay.
they do, so I
And
just,
I think the other big thing in the services is that Redwood Action Community was overseeing the rehabilitation program. I think that's moving back to the senior center now, but it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of overlap where they're both going to be able to assist some households, so that's some good news as well. And I believe that they assisted something like 400 households, I think, in this area over the last couple of years.
yeah, it's gone back to the senior center, the weatherization, yeah. So that one too, so, okay, thank you. But this is a huge undertaking, so it's a lot of work, and good job, thank you.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, so we're going to open up the public hearing for anybody who would like to make comments about the Crescent City housing element. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment on the housing element? All right, we will then close the public hearing. We'll bring it back to the council for any other discussion and/or motions.
Resolution for the housing element and then also the negative declaration.
I actually tied them into the same resolutions.
Are they in the same? Okay. Well then, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we approve resolution 2016-15, resolution of City Council of the City of Crescent City adopting the 2014 to 2019 general plan housing element update.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Nope. Okay, we have a motion. Can you please pull the vote?
Councilmember Hawley?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Inscore?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. That passes unanimously. Okay, so I need to read this next one. We have coming before us the resolution 2016-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Crescent City authorizing applications for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program. Would that be correct? All right, Mr. Taylor.
All right, well, I think the housing element's a good segue to this project. Again, if you'll recall, a couple of years back, we entered into a development agreement with Danco Communities to develop a 27-unit, three-story apartment complex on the site of the former El Patio Motel that the city was actually able to purchase with RDA set-aside funds. Again, Danco moved forward and they did apply for their tax credits. Unfortunately, that's a very competitive program. We're not successful in the first round. So they've become very creative in their process here, which all communities have with the demise of the RDA. I mean, really the RDA those were the funds that were put up forward when folks applied for these types of tax credits, and it showed that they had the soft cost, the money up front, that allowed them to score higher to move forward on these credits. So it's been very challenging since then. Again, here's just architectural rendering of the proposed project itself. So what Danco has done, there is through the State Budget Act of 2014 appropriates $320 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. With that money is used to develop and implement the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, that's AHSC. This program is administered by the Strategic Growth Council, but a portion of it that applies to the actual housing development is actually run by HCD. So what they've done, they recently released a NOFA stating that they had money ready, so they allow jurisdictions to submit a pre-application, which Danco did, and actually they made it past the pre-application portion of this grant program and were invited to come submit a full application. So again, the application itself, it has kind of two components here. The first component is project with the city would be proposing, which is a sustainable transportation infrastructure project. And then the second one, which is one that Danco would be proposing, would be a housing-related infrastructure. In order to apply for grant funding, you have to have an SDI project associated with any other project. So I'll break that down, what that means exactly. So again, to support this project and give the 27-unit senior housing project a better leg up going forward, applying for tax credits in the next round, Danco's trying to obtain, I have the breakdown here, $849,000 in housing-related infrastructure funding. And what that will fund for Danco, it'll fund the actual improvements on the project itself, which would be the sidewalks around the project, which would be some engineering, some soft costs, some patch paving, and certain costs associated with that. The second part of this application we proposed was some sustainable transportation. So with the greenhouse gas emissions program, it supports affordable housing projects and transportation projects to employment areas or major city center areas or attractions that further their objective, which is to have transportation without greenhouse gas emissions, really. So the point of this program is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So what we're proposing as part of this project was pedestrian improvements from the actual, which would start from the proposed development, work their way down 8th Street, and then all the way down to public transportation that's located down there on Front Street, kind of near Front and K. This project includes the installation of all new ADA sidewalks, some intersections, crossings, getting some crossing down at Front Street that will get you over to the public transportation, and then improvements to that actual public transportation lane. It would create an actual lane where public transportation can pull off to the side where folks can wait there to pick up the bus or whatever transportation. If you have further questions about the project itself, Mr. Weir would probably be more suited to explain that to you than I am at this point. So again, so what we're asking for tonight is for the council to approve the resolution to apply for the city's portion of the funding, which it would be in the amount of $1,289,777, which is the cost of funding this project that you see up on the screen right now. Again, that money would come directly to the city if we're successful for implementing this project, and then Danco would, if successful, would leverage the $849,000 that they would receive in this grant funding to then turn around and go apply for the 9% tax credits, I believe, in March of 2018. They feel that it will give them enough to actually obtain the tax credit to move this project forward. Chris Dart is actually here from Danco if you have any questions from him about the project itself as well, or the grant. So that's basically my presentation. That's what we're asking for here tonight, actually, is just to approve the resolution so we can move forward with the grant application.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
I guess I'll start. Mr. Taylor, are these two separate numbers, the 1.289 million and the 849, or is the 849 a portion of the 1.2 million?
Two separate numbers. So again, as I know it's a little confusing. Again, the $1.2 million would be for the Sustainable Transportation Infrastructure Project, which this has to have to be successful. And then the $849,000 would be for the housing-related infrastructure portion. So this grant program will fund, those different types of projects. I believe the cap on this program is somewhere up to $20 million per project.
So is the estimate then that it's going to cost over $2 million to put these sidewalks from the transit bus stop on Front Street to 9th Street?
1.2 for that estimate, and then the 849 is actually related to the housing project itself.
So the sidewalks and around the project itself.
Correct, and connecting into the utilities, patch paving, some engineering costs, that's all built in for that project.
Do we have and I guess this would be a question maybe for Mr. Weir, do we have an engineering estimate of what it's going to cost to do city's portion? I mean,
That
we're
is
asking-
that is our estimate,
So what we're asking for is the
is the
estimate. We're
estimate,
not.
correct.
So we have no idea of whether or not we can do it for that. We're hoping we can. It's not like we are when we're applying for grants and we already know that we're going to match it with 25% or something. This is a real world number that we're estimating.
Correct. We're
Okay.
asking for the complete cost of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, since we have Danco here, I think it'd be kind of nice if you'd like to come up and,
Absolutely.
Sure.
Chris? Yeah.
Thank you. Chris Start, Danco Communities, Arcata. I mean, Mr. Taylor did a fantastic job laying it out. The only thing I would add was, you know, we've been working to get this project funded now for a couple of years. We've applied to tax credits twice. And yeah, this fund is really the fund that I think is going to get us the rest of the way. We need a leverage fund. We've been looking for one. This program came out 2 years ago, but the first year they excluded rural. And so the rural community spoke up and said, hey, you know, we got a big rural population here in California, and you need to include rural. So this round was the first round that rural was included. The beauty of this, actually, and the delay, if this works out and we are successful, is that the city will get to construct and improve these improvements that have been shelved by Public Works. And Mr. Weir, as he said, this project has been designed for quite some time, and it just needed some funding in order to do this portion of it. But a portion of this project's already been constructed, and there's a portion remaining here. Also would add that, you know, Danco we are doing all the legwork for this grant. It's our staff, it's our time, it's our capacity that's putting this grant in on behalf of the city. But once this grant comes in, we don't have to be part of it. It's the city's fund. The city does what they will with it. They put it out to public bid, run their regular procurement process, and we can bid as a general contractor in the public, but we have no connection to that part. The housing-related infrastructure, though, that would come directly to us, to the development, and that would be procured through our offices. And the infrastructure, you know, there is an engineer's estimate, as was mentioned, but it is meant for transportation improvements, sidewalks, things that encourage buses, other than just straight cars. It could be crosswalks, it could be charging stations, it could be anything. And in fact, I've talked to the folks at the program. If things come up along the way, they'll trade out. Like if, for example, we said, you know what, we don't really need to do this piece of sidewalk. We would rather do this charging station in its place. That's okay to get creative and change things around, as long as we don't increase the number after it's all done. And with that, I don't really have anything else to add. If you have any questions, specific questions of me, I can answer them, or attempt to anyway.
are you doing any of these kind of projects in Humboldt too?
We are. We put in 3 applications and got invited to apply for all 3. One is in Arcata, one's here, and one is in Mount Shasta.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, this is also a public hearing, so I must open it up to the public. Is there any comments on this resolution for the application of this project? Any public comments? Seeing no public comments, I will close this public hearing. We'll bring it back to the dais. Is there any more discussion and/or a motion?
I move we approve resolution number 2016-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Crescent City, authorize an application for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there was a motion and a second, and just a note that in the agenda, the resolution is misprinted, so we do have the correct resolution number. So could you please pull the vote?
Councilmember Holly?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Inskore?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
Yes, thank you very much, and that passes
Thank you.
unanimously.
Thanks for
just
coming
wanna
all the way
say,
up.
Thank you, I'm sorry, Catherine, I did, haven't seen this through since, you first came and presented when I was still on the planning commission. I just want to tell you thank you for sticking with this. I know it's been a long process, and I know it's business for you, but it's more than that for us, and we very, very much appreciate your creativity and working with the city and trying to get this done. We really do. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on to continuing business, item number 10, ordinance number 792, sewer charges, with a recommendation the direct staff take all necessary actions to place ordinance number 792 on the November 8th, 2016 budget. Mr. Knight.
Ballot.
Oh, sorry, ballot.
Ballot.
In the budget, ballot.
Throw it in the budget.
Thank you, Mayor Gastineau, council members. So I'm going to talk a little bit about background, just for the purpose of the audience that may be listening. I know you've been working on this for a long time, but we really want to focus on what to do next in response to the referendum. So on March 7th, the City Council did adopt ordinance number 792, establishing pertaining to sewer service charges, and that was set to go into effect July 1st, 2016. That action followed a successful Proposition 218 process that the council initiated in December of 2015. However, on April 4th, 2016, a referendum petition against the ordinance was filed and determined to be successful. Those referendum results were presented to the council on April 18th. So as a result of that successful referendum, ordinance 792 is suspended until repealed by the City Council or until the ordinance is approved by a majority of the Crescent City voters at either the November election or a special election set by the council for that purpose. So this all started, council and staff have worked on these sewer rates for a number of years, since 2013, to try and resolve the financial difficulties of the Sewer Enterprise Fund on a go-forward basis. The first step was the city hired Wildan Financial Services to conduct a thorough sewer rate study. And that study included a number of recommendations, which a couple main ones was to change from the existing flat rate structure to a more equitable consumption-based rate. And this study also included a 5% revenue increase each year for 4 years. That final report was presented to the council on December 7th, 2015. Staff certainly believes that the rates contained in Ordinance 792 and in the Wildan report are absolutely critical to continue to maintain and improve this critical infrastructure out into the future, and to remain in compliance with the city's NPDES permit, and also, just as important, to continue to fulfill our loan obligation to the state of California, which basically, rehabbed the sewer plant and brought it into compliance. So there are a number of options for the council to consider. Certainly your staff's recommending that you direct us, as you mentioned already, to place ordinance 792, take all necessary action to place the ordinance on the November 8th general election ballot. That would be hopefully the final step in this this long process that we've been trying to take care of, the sewer system. It's the only option, I believe, that addresses the needs of the utility and resolves the financial difficulties in the Sewer Enterprise Fund. There are advantages to going on the general election because of consolidation. It would only cost about $6,000. If we call for a special election, the cost would be more, between $20,000 and $25,000. So I think your staff's asking you to stay the course and let the voters of Crescent City consider the ordinance. And If you chose that option, of course, your staff would try and educate as best we could the citizens and provide the information, about why the rates are needed. Other alternatives I pointed out in your staff report include reconsider and repeal Ordinance 792. Staff doesn't recommend this option as it would leave the sewer fund in a structural deficit without adequate revenues to maintain the system, and may result in the city defaulting on its loan. Certainly, I already mentioned we could place it on a general election ballot. That doesn't really get to the answer that much sooner, because as soon as that could take place would be September 2016. And by doing so, the city would bear the entire cost of the election instead of the reduced cost that I talked about in the amount of $20,000 to $25,000. And then another option would be to direct staff to amend the ordinance and bring it back to council for consideration. We're not actually recommending that because any reduction in rates, you'd have to stay with the same structure. So any reduction in rates developed in the sewer rate study will result in reduced and insufficient revenues and would be subject to the same referendum process. So there's a high likelihood that we'd be back having this same conversation. So with that, again, staff's recommending you direct us to do everything we need to do to get it back in front of you to get it on the November ballot. And that'd be a reset, an ordinance that resets that start date would be a part of that process. And I mentioned already on the fiscal analysis side, it would be about $6,000 if we go to the November ballot. So that concludes my comments, unless there are any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Knight? No? Any public comment on this? Taking our ordinance 792 to the general election in November. Okay, we have no public comment. Bring it back for discussion and/or motions.
Just for clarification, I think you already said this, but the only people that would be voting on this particular ordinance will be the city residents. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Even though the majority of the users of the sewer system are
That's correct.
outside
Only the
system.
city of Crescent City voters would be voting on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I agree with staff's recommendation. We should leave it in the power of the voters. So if you're ready, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that I guess a motion is not needed. We just direct staff to take that necessary action to place it on the ballot. Is that a consensus item?
Is that a consensus item? Are we in consensus?
Yes.
We are in consensus. Please, take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, on to item number 11, the 2016-17 proposed budget. The staff recommendation is consider the proposed 2016-17 budget and provide staff direction. Mr. Knight.
So thank you again, Mayor Gastineau, council members. As you're well aware, the council held a budget workshop on May 23rd. At that workshop, staff presented what we referred to a number of times as a bare bones budget with no service reductions proposed in that budget. During that workshop, staff did go through each department budget with the council, and the council had opportunities to ask questions of the department heads and budget managers. The key principles that your staff used in preparing the budget was to, as always, support City Council strategic plan priorities, present a balanced budget, maintain existing service levels, and then that revenues are estimated at realistic levels, which I think your finance director did a very good job of that. At the May 23rd workshop, we presented a total budget, including all of the 5 major funds, in the amount of $17,993,500, which was a slight increase over the 2015-16 budget. Of those 5 major funds, the general fund budget as presented is $4,891,607. And then in your staff report, I have listed out the other 4 funds. I'm kind of focusing mostly on the general fund tonight. So unfortunately, in order to present a balanced budget, staff, I worked together with all your department heads and budget managers, and we reviewed the budgets and reduced them as much as possible to close a pretty good size deficit from the original proposals. Then we had to go back through and pull out all of the one-time expenditures. So the balanced budget really relies on the fact that we didn't include the one-time expenditures, which, you know, is something that you typically would see in the budget, and it would be your staffs doing everything they could to continue to be efficient and, you know, maintain our facilities and upgrade our software systems. But because it was so tight, we pulled those out, and we're going to try and have you focus on that tonight. The one-time expenses, I went back through. This list is on the very last page of your staff report, or the very last page of the budget. And after presenting it to you the first time, I went back through and pulled out, you know, I was looking for every dollar I could get to leave as healthy of a fund balance as possible. The CADS RIM system for the police department was reduced from 110 to 80, but that was after conversations with the chief and Fritz in IT, or IS, and we believe we can, that still shows a commitment to upgrade the software, and we believe we can deliver that project with the reduced amount. Really, the other items in here are all, you know, necessary in your staff's opinion. They include some software upgrades, a few computers here and there, upgrade of the office to Office 365, and a lot of deferred maintenance items. And I talked closely with our Public Works Director, Eric Weir, and I was very uncomfortable in removing any of them, but we did remove a couple of maintenance items on City Hall. And when I say remove, we're just deferring them to a better year. So with that said, the effort, I think, was again to leave as healthy of a fund balance as possible due to unforeseen expenses that may come up. So as council is aware, we are currently in negotiations with 4 bargaining groups. What's not included in the budget tonight is any potential salary increases, no increases in FTEs that we touched on at the last workshop, or any additional funding for the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority. So staff's hoping tonight, we weren't thinking about going back over each department again. Again, I think the department heads did an excellent job of, you know, keeping those budgets as tight as they could and still be able to actually accomplish their work tasks and maintain the facilities as best they can. So with that, we're looking at council giving us direction tonight on the one-time expenses. If you want to consider anything for the airport, certainly that's a policy discussion. You know, from a staff perspective, just looking at the numbers, you know, it would be uncomfortable for me to, you know, include an increase when we don't know some of the stuff that might be coming pretty soon. It'd be my recommendation. I know council's very committed to the airport, understands the importance of the airport. It'd be my recommendation we continue our $20,000 obligation every year and maybe revisit it again at mid-year. But again, that's just my thoughts from your interim city manager. So I think the important part is we're maintaining the services with this budget, and if council were to take this recommendation, the one-time expenses as presented, would be reduced to $323,320 in the general fund, which is what I was focusing on. And give us direction, we'd fold that back in and bring the budget back in June 20. That would leave a general fund balance of $1,412,887, which would be above your stated goal of 25%. It would be 27.1%, and it would leave $86,000 above that 25% total. So again, the effort was to try and maintain that as high as we could, not knowing what might be coming. That concludes my comments.
Discussion, questions?
I just have the one that I brought up before, and that is, I think we need to participate in some funding of Tri-Agency. We've talked here about the importance of economic development. Tri-Agency hasn't been particularly active over the last couple of years, but it kind of has new feet under it now. And I know the county has put it in their budget. I have talked with at least one member of the Harbor Commission, and they intend to put it in their budget. And if we're going to be partners, I think we need to put something in as a city's contribution. And I hate to say that after it's such an austere budget as you stated, but either we're partners or we're not. I think we need to do that.
What are you thinking on numbers?
Well, you know, it's nothing like we used to contribute. I think in the past we've contributed $65,000 or $70,000 a year, but we don't have any staff with Tri-Agency anymore. So I think where it's maybe $10,000 would help with some of the legal costs that are still outstanding, and maybe to get some real tangible economic development activity initiated. So anyway,
Seeing the activity that goes on there, sitting on the commission with Mr. Hawley, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
I guess the bigger question that I have is if we're going to consider any expanded funding, whether that's Tri-Agency or anything with the airport, with the uncertainty that we have with what's going to happen with our labor negotiations, we're right at $85,000 is all we have to stay above the 25% that we have set as a target goal. And I think that it's safe to say that when you start looking at labor in general with 4 different bargaining units and the costs involved with that, and then these other 2 things, if we're going to consider that, I think that we're going to have to ask ourselves, are we going to hold to that 25%? Do we take a year that we say maybe we have to set back from our goal to 20% because of the costs that we're facing this year, and then say that we're going to try to recapture that goal in next year and the years going forward? Because I'm not in favor of pushing any more of this deferred maintenance down the road. Much of this stuff has been pushed way too far. So I think that the one-time expenses are important expenses. I think staff has done a good job of narrowing them down, but some of these things have been deferred multiple times. I just don't see any way economically. I don't see the numbers don't add up to me to be able to maintain our 25%, knowing the things that are still out there that we're going to be faced with. And I guess I would rather get out in front of that here and be able to provide our staff with some direction along that line, as opposed to coming back and then trying to do a budget amendment for something we know we're going to have to face. So I'm not saying I'm against Tri-Agency or against the airport, but if we're going to even consider those things, I think we have to address the 25%. I don't think we can do it and stay there. The numbers just don't seem to add up to me. But I don't know where everybody stands on that, but I think that that's an unfair position to put our staff in, to say, well, yeah, keep the 25%, but do all the stuff. Just, you got to make the numbers work.
I think it's unfair to staff, but I think it's unfair to the 2 city council members that sit on Tri-Agency on a monthly basis and try and do things and have to face our fellows who are making a contribution.
Yep.
So I mean, we may need to at some point make a decision to get out of the JPA if we're not going to contribute. But I don't think we're prepared to do that. I think we need to have some economic development, and the idea is it does pay off in the long run. So, you know, out of our, what did we say? What's the total, $17 million budget? I'm only asking for 10,000.
Rick, can I ask how much the other agencies are contributing?
I do not know right now. The split has ordinarily been about, Mr. Feller may be able to help me. The rest for the county has been doing the lion's share, and actually the harbor and the city have not been contributing over the last couple of years. But we.
I'm just wondering if there's a, you know, like an expectation about what the city's supposed to contribute. That's why I was asking.
I don't think there is that expectation. We talked about it very briefly after the last meeting, and I think that the county was putting in about 33,000, budgeting anyway. I don't know if they put it in, but they've been budgeting about 33,000, I think. But don't quote me on that. But if that was the case, I thought that 10,000 would be our reasonable share.
That's why I was asking, because I didn't know if there was like an amount that they've requested from us. And I do agree, I don't think we need to, we're in a pickle right now because, for capital improvements, because some of them have been pushed down the road due to budget constraints. The other issue, I'm not really wild about dipping into our reserves. So the other part, and I brought this up at our budget workshop, is how do we generate more revenue? And Mr. Knight sent us a comparison of other cities' TOT. So I don't know if that is something that we want to consider, or a different way to generate revenue, but clearly in the next 5 years, our reserve will not be healthy. And so that is something that I am concerned about. And I agree with Mr. Hawley. I think that we, and Mr. Short, council members, that we do need to contribute when we're in a JPA. So the tri-agency, if we're a member, we should contribute to it. But I really don't like the idea of lowering our reserve policy because of the fact that in 5 years, based on what our fiscal director has showed us, that we won't have any reserve. So we need to think about how we can increase our revenue. Either that, or we're going to have to cut services, which I don't like that idea either. So we need to think about those kind of things.
Has the tri-agency set a budget for this coming year?
Budget hasn't even been set. This is kind of a fund that will be used as needed, I guess you could say. It's possible we won't expend $10,000. You know, if you want to make it less, then make it 7,500.
No,
but it's just, in looking at the spending pattern that's happened to date, we've had some legal complications, and I think we've gotten through that. But we're kind of taking our own notes and doing our own thing here, but there are some efforts that are interested. And I know this is a small piece of a very large budget, and I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but I would like to make the recommendation that at least 10,000 be set aside for tri-agency.
This is you're talking about it's a small thing, but it can be a much bigger thing when you start looking at the long term and the value that tri-agency may bring to our community. So I think it's certainly a worthy discussion, something that I wasn't at the budget workshop, but I did meet with with Mr. Knight and Ms. Lieber about this. And one of the things that, you know, when you're just looking for pennies is what it seems like. I just had a thought in that we loaned money to the RV park a year ago to supplement the money that they needed to finish the park outside of the money that Grant provided. This year is the first year that the RV park is scheduled to start paying that money back. That's our money that we loan to ourselves. It's about $26,000. My guess is that, and this is just me, I'm not the finance director, but if it's money we loan to ourselves, it seems like we could defer that another year and put $26,000 into something else, such as tri-agency, or split it between tri-agency and the airport this year and really look at some of this next year. I mean, it's our money. We loaned it to ourselves. Do we need to pay ourselves back $26,000, or would we be better investing that money into our community and some other things and defer that payment for another year? I don't know if anybody can answer that, or if that's a crazy idea. It just seems like an opportunity for us to do something where we think maybe we can't do anything.
Well, if that was council's desire, I would like to think we could find a vehicle to get you there.
Well, that'd be my desire. That's, I mean, instead of paying ourselves $26,000, I think it's $26,000 altogether, something like right about that. I think that we should invest it in the things that have been mentioned here tonight, but certainly tri-agency. Did you want, yes, come on up. You probably know.
The lady who knows.
Feel free to tell Mr. Enscore that he's nuts. It's okay. You won't even be the first person today.
No, I just wanted to clarify that the RV park loan payment can be deferred, but if it does, that $26,000 stays in the RV park. It would not be able to be used by the general fund.
Oh.
It's RV park money.
Well, that didn't help then.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, for those of you at home, I'm sorry for wasting your time. Try to help. Sorry, Rick. Okay, then you can have the 10. I don't know. So are you looking, Mr. Knight, are you just looking for direction from us from the things that you've presented? Do you need to know, are we in favor of presenting, of approving the one-time expenses and then any other general
Yes.
direction we'd like to give you?
Yes, and then we'd fold that back into the budget and bring the amended budget back on the 20th.
Well, I'd like to see us to approve all of the one-time expenses that have been presented to us, and that we provide staff instruction to carve out another $10,000 to put tri-agency into the budget. I guess we just need consensus on that then? And I don't know if we're looking at that as a one-time expense this year because to try to maintain the balanced budget, and then we'll have to revisit it at next year's budget workshop of whether or not we can make this an annual contribution. Would that be all right?
Oh, absolutely. I think it should.
As a one-time
should be
contribution. Good?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is council's consensus. Anything else we want to do? I was looking at the TOT, which is the transit occupancy tax that goes out to the hotels and stuff like that, for the ones around us, because everybody says if we always raise our TOT, they're always going to go somewhere else. And I'm just trying to look for like Humboldt County, but we should look into that for a regional comparison. Just to see
Mike
where
sent
we're
us a regional comparison, or.
Well, I mean, it
actually
has
the
all
whole-
our
The
counties.
whole
but-
state.
But we need to also consider Oregon too,
Oh,
because they'll go across the border.
that's true.
So as a regional comparison, I would go all the way over to Reading and up to probably Bandon and then down into Humboldt County. So,
Well, we have California, we just don't have
right,
Oregon,
Yeah.
so,
the regional part of Oregon.
I mean, the only other way we can raise revenue is to raise our fees and
Yeah.
charge more for our services and,
That's not going to bring in much, though.
no.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. You know, when we brought that up, we just wanted to let you know if we stay on the same path we're on with the revenues staying fairly flat and the expenses increasing because of things out of our control, such as wages and benefits and
that
cost of
is-
living, that eventually we're going to need to look at it in the future. So it was more of a futuristic, and, you know, certainly if we had some direction, we'd work towards bringing you back information, you know, in the future about what to do. But those are more long-term ideas versus this budget.
Right.
And I'm not expecting us to make any big decisions, but we need to be thinking a little bit more long-term in terms of generating some revenue, possibly. That's why I'm bringing it up again.
It's all about sustainability, because one-time expenses, they go and there goes our reserves, so.
Sure.
Got to make sure we can sustain it. Okay, is there any action item we need to do on this? Or
No, I think I have enough direction to fold your thoughts.
Okay,
in
I'm
the
going to
budget.
open up public comment. Is there any public comment on this? Tough decision. A lot of stuff coming our way. Okay, no public comment. I'll close public comment, and we will go back to our agenda. And I'm going to go back to... I'm having fun. Okay, we are now on to continuing business, which we just done our new business. Item number 12. We have potential revisions to the First Amended Joint Powers Agreement between the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte, creating the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Our staff recommendation is review the attached draft Second Amended JPA to confirm that it is relatively consistent with the advisory votes from the City Council of the City of Crescent City, and suggest revisions and/or approve the attached Second Amended JPA. Mr. Knight, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor Gastineau, council members. We're going to ask Ted Ward, the director from the Solid Waste Management Authority, to present this item.
Mr. Ward,
and
how
the
you
next
doing?
one.
Thank you, Manager Knight. Mayor Gastineau, members of the City Council. This is a revision that looks very similar to the last revision you reviewed. However, I guess I pulled this item. I was planning on including it on the agenda, and then the Board of Supervisors took a vote to make some relatively minor changes. They didn't change any of the substance of it, but they did have those wording changes. And so rather than do this twice, we went back to the Authority Board and is now coming before you. And you have before you the revised Joint Powers Agreement between the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte, creating the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. And unlike Tri-Agency and some of the other joint powers authorities that the city is a member of, this one doesn't cost you any money. And in fact, it does provide benefits to the city, including the solid waste and recycling bins at the Cultural Center, the city yard, etc. There's a variety of benefits to this program, but it is a partnership between the city and the county. So what is before you is the recommended revised Joint Powers Agreement, modifying some of the issues that were discussed previously, namely that there are going to be, if this is adopted, there are going to be fewer instances where I take up your time, because you won't have to necessarily approve every time we adopt a budget or adopt an ordinance. There is provision that if there's any non-rate related ordinance, it would come before you, but the regular budget would not. Be happy to answer any questions. And similarly, the approval of the public member of the authority would also not come before you for separate approval.
Right, and also a reminder to the public out there that 2 members of the City Council are on the Solid Waste Management Authority, as also 2 members of the county supervisors. So it's not like you guys are going rogue.
We aren't.
We are still very involved in the process. Okay, any questions for Mr. Ward? No questions for Mr. Ward. All right. Is there any public comment on this issue? Okay, seeing no public comment on this issue, we'll bring it back to the council. Is there any discussion and or a motion?
I'm all in favor of the streamlining idea, and it is a joint powers authority, so they should by far make their own decisions on their budget and the appointment of the public member. And I like the compromise on the ordinances. So with that, I'd like to make a recommendation on item 1 to go with the recommendation for C, on item 2 to go with the recommendation for B, and on item 3 to go with the recommendation for item B. Should I spell them out?
Are we all good for that?
Those changes have already been incorporated in front of into the second.
So we just need to
amended. So
approve this.
approving the second amended joint powers
Oh.
agreement as presented is
Okay,
what we're looking for.
okay, so I will do that. Approve the recommended changes as presented.
So your motion is to approve the recommended changes.
second amendment.
The second amended JPA.
The section, okay.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Do we have that in the record? Okay. Please pull the vote.
Councilmember Holly?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Innscor?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
Yes, thank you, and that passes unanimously. Has it already gone before the Board of Supervisors for their
No,
approval?
now it will go before them again. It has gone before them once. They made some minor wording changes, and so now it will go before them again.
Is that tomorrow or next week?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 13, Delaware Solid Waste Management Authority Rate Ordinance 2016-01. And the recommendation is that the City Council for the City of Crescent City approve the attached authority rate ordinance 2016-01. And since we already approved it, why do we have to do this?
An excellent question, because those
supervisors
changes don't
haven't.
go into effect until after they've gone through the Board of Supervisors and we go through that process. So hopefully, this may be the last time the Solid Waste Authority brings before you a rate ordinance for approval, but that is what we're looking for this time. We had to make some, normally the rate changes that go into effect usually at the 1st of July are made through change orders and rate resolutions. But whenever there's a new rate that's established, then we have to go through the ordinance process, and our JPA calls for any ordinances to be separately approved by the city and the county before they're finally adopted by the authority board. And so the new rates that are established through this rate ordinance include a new textile recycling service, which will be the first time we've ever had that service in Delaware County, but it will at the Delaware County Transfer Station. All of these changes will go into effect in August. We'll also have an established $13 improper disposal fee at the Gasky and Klamath transfer stations. And the idea there is that we need people to separate out their bulky items from their regular trash rather than mixing them together. So that's to act as an ongoing incentive. We really hope we never have to charge that, but it is an incentive to make sure that people are properly disposing, because if they don't, it costs us money. And then finally, there's a relatively small per ton increase based on changes to California law, to Oregon law with regards to solid waste facilities. So staff recommend adoption or approval of this ordinance so that it may go into effect starting in August.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ward?
Will the textile recycling be curbside too? Or?
No, it won't. It will only be available at the Delaware County Transfer Station.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And there'll be a information campaign
Absolutely
for that
so.
as it goes out.
Still exciting.
It is.
Yeah, that's great.
It is. Everybody has clothing, and after it ends one useful life, sometimes it goes to a thrift store, but we all have stuff that has just a few too many holes, and we want it to go to the right place.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Ward? Okay, I'm going to open this up to public comment. Any public comment on this issue? Okay, seeing no public comment, close public comment. Bring it on back to the council. Any more discussion and or a motion?
Now, I make a motion that we approve Solid Waste Management Authority Rate Ordinance 2016-01.
I'll second that motion.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'll second.
I'm okay with it.
I want that second.
Mr. Hawley's been kind of silent all.
Yeah.
He needs a second. So we have a motion and a second. Could you please pull the vote?
Councilmember Holly?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Innscor?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Ward.
Thanks,
That
Ted.
passes unanimously. Give our regards to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Okay, we are on to item number 14, 2016 CDBG application, the Community Development Block Grant. Staff recommendation is direct staff to complete the 2016 Community Development Block Grant application in consultation with Adams Ashley Group Incorporated. So it says Finance Director, Mr. Knight, are you going to introduce this, or do we get Ms. Lever up here?
Going to ask our Finance Director, Ms. Lever, to provide this presentation.
Great. Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We will have Lori Adams from Adams Ashby Group on speakerphone for questions, if we have any. Is she?
Do we need to take a short recess to get?
That's a great idea.
We are going to take a short recess of not more than 5 minutes to get Lori Adams on from the Ashby Group. All right. Gather back around. Our recess is almost over. I said 5 minutes. we ready to get back? All right. We're going to reconvene now from our short recess. We have Lori Adams on the phone from Ashby. Where are we at, Ms. Lever? That recess just took me away. It was great.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Okay, so the city generally applies for and has been successful in receiving funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program for a number of years. It is currently under the 14 CDBG grant funding the B Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project, the Head Start Building Rehabilitation, funding for the food bank and Harrington House. On May 17th of this year, HCD released the 2016 Notice of Funding Availability, announcing approximately $27 million in available funding, and the city is eligible to apply this year. In anticipation of the release of this NOFA, the city began public outreach back in March. We sent letters to local nonprofits to discuss potential projects. We had a public meeting. We've also had a lot of staff discussion and discussion with Lori Adams. In general, any eligible jurisdiction can apply for up to 3 activities. Depending on what the 3 activities are, there's different funding limits within those categories. They're all listed in your staff report. I don't think I need to go through every single one. But based on the public meeting that we had, as well as discussions with Adams Ashby Group, staff is recommending these projects. So within the public service activity, we can apply for up to 3 individual programs, and those 3 programs can total no more than $500,000. In the past, the CDBG funding has been passed through the city to RHS Food Bank and Harrington House. We have currently awarded $150,000 for each of those programs in our 2014 grant. And for this next grant, RHS has submitted proposals requesting $250,000 each, which would be the entire $500,000 that's available in the public service category. These programs do provide significant benefits to city residents, and staff definitely recommends that we continue funding them. However, due to the needs of the city as a whole and the general fund budget as we were discussing, staff is recommending that we keep RHS funding at the current level of $150,000 for each of the 2 programs, and use the remaining $200,000 in the public service to help fund the swimming pool, which would be $100,000 per year for 2 years. The second activity that we are recommending is a micro-enterprise activity. We would like to apply for $100,000 to fund a micro-enterprise program, which would provide business counseling to get small businesses started up in the city. If that is approved, once we had the grant contract from the state, we would issue a request for proposals for an organization who would run that program for us. The third activity that we are recommending is planning and technical assistance. We can apply for up to 2 different studies for a total of $100,000. So what we would like to do is apply for $50,000 to have a study done on the police department building. What this study would do is take a look at the building and the grounds and come up with a plan for what improvements could be made to make the building more efficient and up to current standards. Then once we had that completed study, it would help us apply in a future grant for the funding to actually do those improvements. The second study that we would like to do relates to economic development. We would like to apply for $50,000 to have a study done that would establish a business loan program in the city. So this study would provide us with all of the materials, the policies, the forms, everything we would need to get a program started, And then for that also, we would apply for funding for the actual program in a future application. If we applied for these activities that we are recommending, along with the general admin, which is just a percentage that the state applies to help us run the program, we would be applying for $752,500. The application is due July 27th. HCD will inform jurisdictions in October whether or not their applications are successful, and they said tentatively the funding would become available in January of 2016. So what we're asking for is council direction if you approve these particular programs for us to apply for, or if you have any other recommendations.
Is that 2017 for January?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Any questions for Ms. Lever? I'm just to clarify on these, the PTA, which are the planning and technical assistance, those are always, everybody always talks about, we're always planning, and not doing anything, but these are the foundations of how we get bigger grants in the future. And without this paperwork or these studies, we have quite the lesser chance of getting any grants in the future. So these things are a good thing, even though they are studies that don't produce much for our city besides bigger grants in the future. So.
Right, and this is a way for us to use grant funding to pay for those studies.
Exactly.
There is a 5% cash match on the studies. So if we were successful in getting funding for both studies, the city would have a $5,000 match, which is on the one-time expenditure list.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I? Please. We have not been funding for some time, I don't think, the municipal swimming pool. And that was funded at one time, as I understand it.
Yes,
right?
that's
How long
correct.
ago was that?
2 years ago was the last time, I
Oh,
believe.
okay, that recently.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is, are these grants competitive? Or
Yes.
is there any reason to believe the swimming pool would not be competitive?
No, our consultant, Lori Adams, has reviewed this list of projects and believes that they have a good chance of being funded.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Lori, you're on the phone, right? Hi. Is she still there?
Yes, I'm here. I can't hear the question clearly.
Oh, okay. Do you feel like we have a really good shot at all of these projects then, right, Lori? This is Catherine.
Are you there?
Lori, can you hear me?
Hello?
I don't know how to do this. Lori.
There we go. Yes, there, I can hear.
Okay.
I couldn't hear the question clearly.
You were asked about whether or not you think that these projects have a good chance of being successful.
Okay, am I able to answer now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, they have a good chance in being successful. They are situations that are directly related to individuals in a limited clientele and are targeted to meet 100% of the programmatic function of the CDBG program. So on public services, they allocate 15% of the total funding for public services, and all three of these meet those requirements. And each one of the categories is graded against the similar category. So if something is not competitive in one category, you would be funded for the projects that you are competitive in. But each one of these enterprise funds, for example, is one of the most underused programs and is likely to be funded without any competition. The PTA applications, if one of your categories is funded, then you're automatically awarded the PTA application. So that gives you kind of an idea of how that works. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I know.
Go ahead.
We have representatives from RHS here to talk to us. So, Mr. Feller, stage is yours.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff, my name is Scott Feller. I'm the Executive Director for Real Human Services. And first off, I'd like to thank the City Manager for forwarding me the staff report as soon as it was available so we could analyze it. And Linda has been absolutely wonderful because our last reporting requirement, HUD came down with a month and a half before the reports were due and changed the previous 2 years' reporting requirements. She was able to help us work through that, so that's been really good. Rural Human Services is a 501c3 corporation. We have 35 employees, about 90 volunteers. I'd like to introduce our newest member, Jolanda Ingram. She is our new Harrington House Director, Program Director. She comes to us from Hoopaw, lives here locally. She managed the domestic violence shelter up there for 10 years, and she's a practicing attorney, so we got a good one there. Harrington House is our largest program. It's a 28-bed, 4-crib facility. In our application, we showed you that we were having about 6,000 meals and about 2,500 bed nights per year. If I use the first quarter stats this year and extrapolate those further on for the rest of the year, we're going to be at 3,500 bed nights and about 11,000 meals. Harrington House has been supported by a letter that I handed out just a little while ago from the sheriff and from Senator McGuire. He supports all of our program. Those letters came in subsequent to our application. Ron Phillips will also talk about the food bank in just a minute on that. Harrington House also has several other programs that the mayor is quite familiar with. Our Workforce Center is a partnership with the Department of Rehabilitation and the county through CalWorks. We have quite a few different staff members from different departments in there. We had 16,000 people call in, 15,000 walk-ins, and 9,000 people used our computer lab last calendar year. So that does provide a pretty good service in a different venue for the community. We also have our supported living services. We're one of 4 providers in this community for our intellectually challenged, so we can integrate them into the community and provide services for them that help them with their lives. Our food bank last fiscal year, we put out 297,000 pounds of food in a couple different food banks. We delivered to 5 sites, including Klamath Smith River and around town, and some homebound seniors that have no other way of getting that. We provide that service to them. We have a natural resources division. It is, we have educated over 15,000 kids in conservation through our Salmon in the Classroom over the last 19 years, and we have done 24 miles of critical stream habitat restoration over our career. So that works out quite well. We also have, as Catherine alluded to earlier, we got a grant from the California Endowment for Career Pathways in Healthcare, K through 12. We hope to educate kids and get them on a path for a career in the healthcare industry. If you look at the Department of Labor stats, that's the largest potential out there. About 22% of the jobs going to be created in the next decade are in the healthcare industry, and we want to help them get there. So we're working with the school district quite a bit on that. I think all of you have met Rachel individually. Hopefully, it's on her agenda. Did I miss one? Did I miss one program? No, I got that. Also within our food and family division, we have Farmers Market. Most of you probably saw it. We opened this weekend. I think we have a record of the number of vendors we had there, or real close to it. And then we are going to be doing a second farmers market this year in July, August, and September only. We'll be back at the fairgrounds on Thursday evenings from 4 to 7:30. And we'll have a lot more food vendors and a lot more. We already have 35 signed up, 36 have already signed up for that. The vendors requested that, so we're going to make that happen. Ron's got a little bit of a presentation on his numbers for the food bank, and then I'll make my specific ask on our application.
Thank you. Good evening. I won't talk till 9 o'clock, Ron. My name is Ron Phillips. I'm the Food and Family Director for RHS. We passed out a little earlier a little sheet there. If you look at it, the part in blue, the total individual totals, household totals, and extra boxes. The part in blue was that we, in 2013, when we got the CDBG grant, it was for 2 years, and we were planning on so much money up every month to spend for food. As it turned out, we had a little bit of more money than what we needed, so we went to 2 times a month to distribute food. That's why that's in blue. Once that grant ended and we had what we thought was a transitional grant for a year while the city got caught up on their spending of the sewer pipeline or whatever it was that you did, then we started cutting back. We went back to once a month to make sure that we had enough funds to get through, because we knew that we were only going to get it for 1 year, and our amount of money would be somewhere around $125,000. So we started buying less food and giving out less. So in the CDBG grant of 14-15, I'm sorry, we were able to carve out some money that we bought a brand new 10 by 20 walk-in refrigerator. I think all of you have been back in my food bank. You know, I don't have a lot of room back there. We were also able to have some money to buy a 14-foot box van from the senior center that they didn't need any longer. I can tell you that every day since we've had both of those items, they are used every day of the week. Well, Monday through Friday. Sometimes on Saturday. So every month, let me go back one thing. I don't know exactly what month it was in 14, but the Community Assistance League, downsized. And one of the programs they were going to get rid of was a program that is through the federal government, comes through Redwood Empire. They build a box for seniors. You have to be 60 years older, and you have to be financially strapped and meet those requirements. We are allowed to hand out 160 boxes a year. I'm sorry, 160 boxes a month. We normally average around 155. And we have to go down to Redding or Santa Rosa every month to pick those boxes up, because we don't have the storage to be able to get more. At one time, when we had, before we had the box van, it would cost me $1,200, I'll get my numbers right yet, $1,200 a month to bring a truck all the way from Santa Rosa up here. And a 40-foot van, you get a lot of food on a 40-foot van. I was spending somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 to get food up here, and we just didn't have the room to do it. Once we got the box van, and I found a carrier that goes to Eureka, we've been able to work with them for the last couple of years. So once a month, I only have to run to Eureka and pick up the food, which makes it a lot easier for us. We can carry up to 6 pallets of food, 7,000 pounds maximum. So it's not a lot of food when you figure that 3 of those pallets are the CSFP, which is the Senior Box Program. But everything counts. This year we're operating on 125,000, and it's for 2 years. It's, as you can see, the numbers that we are doing right now are close to 700 boxes a month that we put together. And all of these folks are, of course, qualify. I came in just about the time Eric was talking about what it takes to rent, and I think he quoted somewhere $300 a month. Well, if you're on a fixed income or no income, $300 a month, you know, for rent, and then you're only getting $1,000 either through some Social Security or whatever it is. You know, that doesn't leave a whole lot for food. So every bit of the food that we can give them is that much better off for them. And I've been fortunate because we have, we work with Experience Works, which is a federal program that's administered by other companies, and it's for people that are 60 years or older and wanting to get back into the workplace. So this year I have two folks from Experience Works. One of them is Kathy Long. Kathy Long has been with working with RHS now for about 3 years. She has been assigned to do the senior program and learn all about that, and does all the paperwork. And now she's actually been moved over to do learn all of the food bank, what we do back there, because one of these days I would like to retire, and I'd like for somebody to know what's going on. So, so I'm going to ask Vanna to come up here, because I brought a little something I want to show you. And then you tell me, who was it? Somebody, was it one of you that lived on a certain amount of money for a week or something that tested that? No, I don't remember who it was now. So this is what people got last month in their box. Now they did get the package of chicken thighs that weighed 10 pounds. Now, this is all of the EFAP food. This is the federal food that they would get. All right? So without the CDBG funding, I would not be able to add anything to that. And that's why it's so important that we have the money that that we would like to have, and that's at least the $225,000 or $250,000. Some of that is also, and Lori can contest, it does go for some wages. It also goes for transportation and some other items. So I'm sure you have, when you were going through this project, you've seen exactly what the breakdown is. So now you saw the difference. This would be this is this month's from the EFAP program.
You know, Ron, can I ask a question while we're doing this?
Yeah.
This is what someone would get once a month or twice a month?
Once.
Once a month. So how do they feed themselves the rest of the month? Do they not get food stamps at $300 a month? They should get food stamps.
Some of them do. There's a lot of people that don't qualify for food stamps or won't go get food stamps. A lot of seniors are on a fixed income.
Oh, I see, but it's just above the threshold?
Right. Now, there are other agencies in town that help out. CAN does a little bit. They do the gleaning out of Safeway and out of Walmart. They have a lot bigger area to operate in, and so they can take care of the gleaning because a lot of it has to be cleaned and so forth. So they operate, I think they're down to 2 times a week is all they operate. And then Grace Lutheran does a little bit, Dorcas does a little bit. So it's not a whole lot, let me tell you. So anything that we can add to that box. Now, with that little bit there, you would get, this time, we got some catfish in, and it's, they would get about 2 pounds of catfish per person. And so, and through another grant, it's not really a grant, it's the tax write-off, checkoff, we're going to buy milk from our local distributor. They'll get a quart of milk for their cereal. So anything that we can add, we try to give out at least 12 items. Now, with our refrigerator, we've been lucky because I can get what they call donate, don't dump food, which is mostly produce, where farmers will turn it, give it to food, feeding for food. What's it actually? Food for people. And that's who we get it from. We can buy it at 3 cents a pound. So today I got in 1,200 pounds of broccoli that we'll add to it next month, or this coming month, and about 2,500 pounds of onions and potatoes and those kinds of things. So we're lucky that we can get those types of things to add to that box. But again, you know, the staple items is what we need to get in there. So
Is there an income qualification?
on everything, there's income qualifications. So the average person, just one single person, it would be about, was it 1,400 a month. Yeah. So they could make up to 1,400 a month. We go through we have to go through every application, and it usually runs around $800 to $900 is what these folks are getting through Social Security or some other benefits. So, any other questions? I'll turn it back over to Mr. Feller.
Ron does a really good job of buying food, like that box of Cheerios that's there. We bought 3 pallets, got them for 9 cents a piece. I mean, pretty good shoppers with the sources we have to go do that. So we asked for $250,000 for each program. Back 2 cycles ago, we got $225,000 for each program, plus an additional $50,000 for the food bank, where we bought the box truck and the walk-in refrigerator. This time, we asked for that, and seeing, you know, with what's coming in with the pool and your needs there, I would ask that we be given the $150,000 for each of our programs, plus the vehicle request we had in there. The food bank, the truck we want to replace, our pickup, is a 1973. And we want to get a newer used pickup and put a tail lift on it, a lift gate on it, so it can lift food so we can move them in and out with our forklift. All the food touches human hands moved in and out of our food shelter, our food bank, and last year we did 297,000 pounds. So that's a lot of food with our volunteers. And it'd be easier just to be able to move it with the forklift in and out and deliveries. For Harrington House, it's a 2001 van, a wheelchair van. It's seen better days, and we would like to replace that. So if that's possible, I would ask that you consider that or reconsider that in and above with the staff report. And I understand all the metrics you have to go through, but we're an agency about second chances, and we're pretty proud of what we've done. So with that, any questions? Thank you.
Scott, I'm sorry, I waited for you to turn around and then ask a question. Have you explored any kind of donations of vehicles from local or regional?
We take everything that we can get.
Just wondering about your
Yeah, I've actually made contact with another automotive firm. We're working with them to see if we can get stuff donated at a severely reduced cost, because he is invested in that firm has invested in domestic violence shelters in the Medford area before, and so we're having that conversation because he has a business over here also, so we're working on that. But yes, we take all donations. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, as we keep going with this discussion, that I did have a conversation with Mr. Feller yesterday on the phone. I had some questions about some of the statistics and what was in the body of his report, and I appreciated talking to him. But I thought everyone should know that I had that conversation.
Oh, I talked to him also today, too. Mostly procedural stuff about how to do the ask, and then talk to the council. And let it be known that I used to work for RHS for 5 years, and I packed a few of those boxes and moved a lot of food and drove the truck and all the trucks that they're talking about, drove the van that they're talking about too. And they're used on a daily basis, so.
For that matter, I worked for them as well.
That's the only place I didn't work.
The only place.
So it just comes down to if, I mean, we can only move things around in that one category if we wanted to increase the RHS contributions through the CBDG grant. So, I'm trying to look for the cost of the van. What was the cost of the van?
23 and 20 of them.
23, okay, thanks.
Truck was 20.
Right. So let's just round it up to 50.
And I would say that the van, especially the van related to Harrington House, I can understand the importance of that, because you're probably picking up families in difficult times in the middle of a rainstorm, and you need
We
to have...
pick up families and all their belongings literally and pack them off.
Yeah.
And bring them to the shelter, which this shelter is 10 years old, needs a little TLC now, but it was the first publicly acknowledged shelter in the state. It's a confidential facility, so once you walk through the door, you know, the penal code and the evidence code all take effect. But everybody knows about it, and Terry McCune Oster did such a good job on it. It's been modeled on at least 2 other facilities I know of. So it's a good facility. It's a good facility. It's well planned.
Scott, you have in your budget for Harrington House supportive services of $20,000. What is that exactly?
Oh, it's Harrington House. I think it was direct services to them. I can get clarification and I can get it back to you. But that was a month ago. But supportive services is that we have to buy a lot of other things that go with that for them. For those, we have packets of stuff we provide to them, direct services, to all of our participants that come through there. And then we bring in counseling, and we do buy food for there.
Well, you have a total budget of $45,000 for supportive services, but you're asking for CDBG to give $20,000.
$20,000, because the supportive services, everything other than salaries that we do there.
Okay. Thank you.
Is Matt still here?
No, he left. Oh.
Mr. Knight, for our swimming pool, what would the 200,000 or the 100,000 a year go for?
It can pretty much support all of the operations, so it would be a complete general fund offset in that amount.
We were $284,000 in the red for the pool, so I'd imagine it just offset that loss of funds for running the pool. Isn't that what you're saying?
Yes, the pool budget would be reduced by whatever amount we applied for. If it were the 200,000, it'd be 100. What we planned was 100,000 each fiscal year.
I guess I would just say, and I'm certainly a proponent of supporting our pool. I guess one comment I'll make about the pool, because it seems to be an ongoing statement that's made. The pool just loses so much money. The pool loses so much money. The pool also generates income. It generates almost $200,000 a year annually. It's not going to generate, maybe it's not projected this year, but most of our departments don't generate revenue. The pool does. Most of our departments just cost us money. So if we looked at it from that standpoint, we bring in revenue through tax dollars that support all of our different departments. We compare the pool differently because we base it solely on the fees that are charged to use it. So I think that maybe we're a little disingenuous sometimes of bagging on the pool about it losing money. It generates a couple $100,000 a year. That's not enough to pay for all the services. I'm not sure that losing money at the pool is a bad thing when you look at the value that it adds to our community as a whole. It's an investment into this community. I don't mind investing $250,000 into the health and welfare of this community. That's one component. What we're talking about here with RHS and entities like this is another component of the health of our community. So while it seems like the easy grab for a council member to say, great, that just relieves some of our budget constraints, just grab that and put CBG money back towards something that's costing us money, or we look at a bigger picture of our community. I just think that we should look at that, and I do think that we have a responsibility to change the tone of the conversation around our municipal pool, because I'm really tired of it always taking this bad light. Oh, we lose money, we lose money, we lose money. What if the police department had to write enough tickets to pay for itself? Nobody'd like that.
And that's the whole thing about it. And that's the whole thing about government, is that providing services for our community to make our community a better place to live.
True.
And so what I was thinking is that if the pool, that 200,000 was going for a new boiler over the next couple of years, something to improve it, to make it more efficient and also bring those costs down, that would be a different thing about
Than just paying lifeguards.
than just using that 200,000 over the 2 years to just offset costs of the pool, which we were already used to paying for our community. So, but providing, I was just thinking taking 50 grand out of the swimming pool ask and putting that 175 and 175 for both RHS things, that they could be able to have vehicles that would impact many people in our community in a different way than, our pool, which we are used to paying money for, and they'd only be $25,000 a year that we would not recoup through the CDBG. I think that would be a better use of our money for our whole community and the Del Norte County community also, for us to do. I mean, we have some tough budget stuff coming up, and $50,000 here and there, and that sounds like a lot of money to most people, but when you're talking about a city budget, that's not very much either way. But it is a big difference in these community organizations that help out everybody.
Well, I'd be willing to maybe help out a little bit with the vehicles, but our general fund money also purchases the vehicles that we would buy for our city police department, which we also desperately need.
Very true. But for the funds that we have right now, I mean, and we get that, 100,000 back for something else on our budget coming up.
That's what I'm saying, is that
75,000, 100,000.
we do need, our city police department is really hurting, and so, it's like rob Peter to pay Paul, and we want to help our community's health. So I just want us to think about how we're impacting everything, because the services that we have for the pool are a health and safety issue, and I totally agree that we should continue to be vested in the pool services. But when you're trying to think about, oh, well, we're always in a deficit with the pool anyway, that's okay, so we could afford to not use CDBG money for the pool so we can help another agency buy a vehicle. I think we need to be careful about how we're framing things. And I'm all for supporting Harrington House and the food bank. I think that's critical. But I think maybe we should kind of compromise on how much we need to do for other agencies in addition to our own fiscal health and for what we do for our own organization.
I guess maybe a procedural question or a technical question. Was there any reason from an application standpoint that having the pool fund request as it was that would imply that somehow we would have a better shot at receiving by including the pool at this amount? I mean, you know, sometimes how you frame your grant and how you allocate funds will sometimes position you more favorably to get the grant. Do you have any insight on that?
No, the funding for the pool that we could theoretically request is anything up to the deficit that the pool operates at. The reason that these numbers were chosen was to keep RHS at the same funding that they already had,
Okay.
but we can change that if that's council's decision.
Okay.
And that's the $500,000 limit for this particular public services.
That's correct.
So can we make the offer of funds contingent upon the getting of the CDBG funds?
Well, yeah, they don't get it if we don't get it.
That's, I mean, obviously that's there, but, I mean, my thought was that obviously we're not budgeting for this, $100,000 for each year because it's a grant application. We have sunk quite a bit of, maintenance and repair money, upgrade money into the pool in the past few years. My thought was to, you know, upon receipt of this money, do our best to offset the cost of the pool, but at the same time, as Mr. Enscore said, impact our community in a different way, I guess, is the words you used. Obviously contingent upon the money arriving.
Mr. Hawley, you're deep in thought.
He is thinking.
I just think that this particular grant really was meant to address social services. And yes, we can take money here and put it here, and maybe it ends up in the police department, maybe it doesn't. I just think probably the real honest approach is to take a look at the safety aspects of what we're trying to answer here. And the idea of a battered family not being in a vehicle that is running well, I don't want to get too dramatic about it, but that is a reality that they deal with all the time. And I would like to, at minimum, fund that van with this. And I would defer to the rest of you as to whether or not a new food truck is something that you want to do, but I'd like to fund the entire amount of the van and reduce our pool expenditures by the same amount, our pool budget. But
I can support them.
But and that's not meaning to demean the food program. You can see what we're wrestling with. It's all a big matter of balance. And we're trying to balance what you heard was a really austere budget as a whole for the city, and we're just trying to do what's best for everyone. But maybe we could drop it, make it $20,000 for each program, and that would be almost enough to get the vehicles they need.
170.
And so
he's taking 40 out.
So we still get $160,000 toward the pool.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is, you know, a compromise, you know, not to fully fund, but I'm good with helping them a little bit more to help them get the vehicles that they need.
Well, that would put us close to a $200,000 offset at what the deficit at the pool, as opposed to 284 projected next year. If we put 80,000 into it each of the next 2 years, I like the idea. I think that if we would reallocate $170,000 to each, to the food bank and to Harrington House, and then 160 to the pool.
You know, because, you know, I agree that services for the CDBG and the spirit of the thing is just that services for the pool are important because it's a safety issue. And, you know, whatever general fund money that's taken out is also a safety issue for, say, law enforcement vehicles. So it's just, you know, it's kind of a vicious circle. So, so I'm good with doing a compromise.
So, Mr. Inscore, was that a motion? You said that pretty eloquently.
I did I?
Would you do it again?
Yeah, if I could
Okay,
find
but
we have to have public comment first.
Oh, yeah.
Did we ever close public comment? We did have public comment.
We did have public
I don't think you
comment.
officially announced it. You just asked Mr. Feller to come on. We should see if there's any other public comment.
Is there any other public comment on this issue?
Oh, you do have some.
You already commented. You can sit down, sir.
No, I just want to clarify something. When we talk about a truck for the food bank program, this is just basically to move, when food comes in, either through the EFAP program or we get it from, we have to put a lot of it in storage because we just don't have the room to operate. So what that means is that, you know, we get one item, I always buy 60 cases. And that could be anything from, let's say, cereal that would probably be about 20 pounds to up to 40, 45 pounds for something. So if we could have a lift gate on a flatbed truck, you know, of 1 ton, then we could take it over to our warehouse, take our pallet jack and move it in and out of the warehouse. So as it stands right now, it comes in, we put it on the truck, we take it over, we unload it, and a month from now when we really need it, or 2 months, we have to load it back in, bring it over, and then, you know, distribute it. So it's not that, I mean, that's you talk about health and safety, that is the health. Today I unloaded about 1,600 pounds of frozen into our freezer. It came in on the truck, we put it on our pickup, took it over to Harrington House and put it in the freezer, unloaded every one of them, you know. And guess what I get to do next in 3 weeks? I get to unload it all back onto the truck and take it back over. So you see, that's the only clarification I wanted to make. And any money that we can get for food, obviously, I would appreciate it.
And that vehicle go all over Delaware County, down to Klamath and Smith River?
Yeah,
Any distribution?
it goes everywhere. I mean, we go to Smith River every month and Klamath every month, and so.
Yeah, you can send a smaller truck instead of the big truck, save cash. Okay, public comment, come on up. Ms. Weir.
Thank you.
I'll make sure to state your name and if you're a county or city resident.
Oh, my name's Amber Weir. I am a business advisor for the North Coast Small Business Development Center. I'm a county resident. I just wanted to say how excited the SBDC is for having the economic development wing on that proposal for the CDBG application. I wanted to remind everyone that we have, in the history of this, we have actually been able to apply and do a proposal for this in previous years, and I just wanted to remind everyone of the outcome of that previous 3-year program and what it delivered. We were talking about economic development and how important that is going to be for increasing revenues. So I'd like to tie that in and be thankful that if this does get approved, that will be also funded. Historically, when we were able to submit the proposal and work for the city, we were able to serve 296 businesses that all were in the CDBG income qualifications. And of those businesses, 89 were expanding businesses and 207 were brand new businesses. So they were all starting new jobs. We actually, the goal was to only start 20 new jobs, and we were able to attain 67 new jobs with that grant funding money. So I just wanted to remind everyone how exciting that is, that it's on the table and on the application. So thank you for considering that and hopefully approving it. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so what's our procedure, Ms. Rice?
I think that if you want to change what's in the staff report, that someone could go ahead and make a motion so that it's clear as to what changes you would like to make.
All right. Mr. Mayor, with that advisement, then I would make a motion that we direct staff to complete the CBDG application in consultation with Adams Ashby, Inc., and to include the activities as presented in the staff report with these changes. Under Activity 1, the public service activity, that the allocations be $170 to RHS for Harrington House, $170,000, sorry, sorry, Scott, $170,000 to RHS for the food program, and $160,000 to for the municipal swimming pool, and that activity 2 and 3 be remain the same, $300,000 to the micro enterprise, and the $100,000 for the two studies, the police department building and the business loan development. 100,000 for the other, for 3. 300,000 for 2 and 100,000 for 3. It's like 300,000 total.
Are we,
What it says in the staff report. I'm not sure why it says, oh, max, oh, I see. Well, you're looking at that page. I'm reading the report. Yes, 100,000, as you said. Thank you for clarification. They do.
okay.
It's
And,
getting late.
did you get that?
Is that
Okay, I'll second that,
All
I'll
right.
second that motion.
Sorry.
Okay, so to be clear, the motion was to,
Really, good luck.
to accept, direct staff to complete the application with the reapportionment of the public services activities to 170 to each of the RHS programs and 160 to the swimming pool, while the remaining activities remain the same.
That's it.
Boom.
You
All
should
right.
vote.
Pull
That's
the
what I
vote,
wrote
please.
down.
Pull that vote.
Councilmember Holly?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Inskor?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
Yes, and that passes unanimously. Good job, people. Good job. All right.
You can stay for the whole meeting.
Yes, I know. Oh, I should have moved that to the end. Okay, we are now on to item number 15, which is the last thing on our agenda. It's the Pelican Bay Revenue Sharing Agreement with Del Norte County. The staff recommendation is to approve the attached agreement between the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte regarding distribution of revenue arising out of the annexation of the Pelican Bay State Prison to the City of Crescent City, and authorize staff to make payments to Del Norte County consistent with the agreement. Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. In the spirit of time, I'll try and condense this without losing too much information, but as you're well aware, in 1991, Crescent City annexed the Pelican Bay State Prison, and as a result of that, we were eligible to receive an increase in certain state revenues. So we followed that up with entering into an agreement with the Del Norte County to equally share those increased revenues that resulted from the annexation of Pelican Bay. So that agreement has served us well since then, up until a couple of years ago when a few things changed at the state level. And the revenues that we're talking about really are gas tax revenues and what used to be called vehicle license fee revenues, and then other subvention fund revenues that we equally shared as a part of the agreement with Del Norte County. So one thing that came up in July 2014, we were audited. Our gas tax revenues were audited by the State Controller's Office. And in the exit conference, they made a finding that our pass-through of the share of the gas tax revenues to the county was not okay. And so because of that audit finding, we ceased making those payments. Since then, though, in January 2016, the city did receive a letter from the auditor controller rescinding that finding, and they did determine that based on the agreement that we have in place and the county's use of those revenues, that it was appropriate. So staff included that in the mid-year budget adjustment and included making those payments. So we're on board now on a go-forward basis for dealing with the gas tax revenue. The other thing that happened was in 2004, the state of California adopted a vehicle license fee, basically swapped out vehicle license fees for property tax in lieu in the same basic proportion. So they changed how that was called out. And then in August 2015, we received a legal opinion that based on the fact that the 1991 agreement does not address the revenue distribution of the new property tax in lieu fees, the city basically ceased making those payments. Certainly the county brought that up and was concerned. They brought it up in a couple of different ways and a couple of different 2-by-2 meetings. So with that, your staff has been working with county staff to take a look at, to develop this agreement that we're talking about tonight, to address those changes in how the money flows to the city and how we share it back with the county in the spirit of the 1991 agreement. So we worked with the county staff for a couple months. It's been reviewed by our finance director, city attorney, county staff, auditor controller, county council, I believe also. The agreements went back and forth several times at least. So the agreement does specify how, the attached agreement we're talking about does specify how the city and county will continue to share revenue, now referred to as property tax in lieu funds instead of VLF revenues, referenced in the 1991 agreement. Your staff believes the proposed agreement is consistent with the intent of the sharing of the increased revenues that we receive. So by way of fiscal analysis, the 2015-16 budget includes approximately $85,000 in property tax in lieu funds for distribution to Del Norte County for fiscal year 2014-15, and then the proposed budget that we have been presenting to the council the last couple of meetings also includes $162,963 in property tax in lieu funds for distribution to Del Norte County for fiscal years 2015-16 and 2016-17. So we have it in our budget. If this agreement were approved by the council, then we would be authorized, we would have the vehicle to basically start making those payments. In the staff recommendation, I think I left out, approve the agreement and authorize staff to make the payments consistent with the agreement, but also and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement or sign the agreement. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Knight?
I wanted to say thank you for a staff report about a bunch of convoluted things that have been brought about from the state of California and making it relatively understandable. I appreciate that.
It's all a shell game with the state. Let's move things around as much as possible.
I just want to personally say that I appreciate Mr. Knight's hard work and staff's work on this. I received a call from our county administrative officer telling me how much he appreciated the work that you've done and what a great partner you have been in trying to work with the county on this. And I think that speaks well, not only speaks well for you, Mr. Knight, but it speaks well for our city. And I just think that you need to be congratulated, and for something that was as confusing as Mr. Short just said was, that you sorted it out with the county. And I'm very, very appreciative of that. And thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, because it had gone a little bit sideways with the county, so yeah, we're
Yeah.
all very appreciative that it was straightened out, and thank you.
Let me try my motion thing again, because I kind of made a mess of the last one.
We got to do some public comment.
Oh, gosh, I was all ready.
I know, you're already,
Mr. Short will do it
we're
now.
almost to 9 o'clock.
I know,
so
I was
I'm
trying
gonna-
to get
I'm going
it
to
out.
stretch this out a little more. No. Is there any public comment on this issue? Oh, see, we ran out of time, so we're out of public comment time. So seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to council.
No, Mr. Short can do it now, I want to.
Are you delegating this
Yeah,
to me?
yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Pro Tem? I will then make a motion that we approve the attached agreement between the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte regarding the distribution of revenue arriving out of the annexation of Pelican Bay State Prison, and authorize staff to make payments to Del Norte County consistent with the agreement, and further authorize the mayor to execute the.
You did that so much better than I could have.
That was good.
I'll second it. Yeah, I can do that. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Should I repeat that?
No.
Okay, no. Could you please pull the vote?
Councilmember Hawley?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Councilmember Short?
Yes.
Pro Tem Enscore?
Yes.
Mayor Gastineau?
And yes, thank you, that passes unanimously. Hey, we are done with our numbered items on our agenda, but now we're on to city council items. Is there any legislative matters? Any? Nope. Okay. City manager report.
Vote tomorrow.
And we're gonna get to that? Jeez, hold
That's
your
legislative.
horses. All right, city manager's report.
Okay, the only item I wanted to report on was I wanted to ask the Public Works Director to come up and brief the council on our B Street project.
All right. That's right, because I think I put a request in for that. Mr. Weir, how you doing?
We're good.
Hey, take your time. We got a lot of
We,
fun.
all night,
Yeah,
right?
all night,
I mean,
all night.
Night is young. All right, everybody wants to hear about the B Street project. But yes, there's been a lot of movement on the B Street project. The project is going well, although we were delayed by weather early on, so it is dragging out. The update, as most of the council and community has probably seen, we are starting to move a lot of the material into the park, into the east section of the park, actually by the pool. So that was incorporated into the project and will actually help us use the excess material that we have from the B Street project. So approximately about 2,500 cubic yards was moved into that area. That'll level out that area, make it more usable for our coastal access project. So that's what's going on in that portion of the project. Dirt will be continued to be moved over the next week or so, and then before the project is done, that area will be hydro-seeded, so we'll have nice grass. Unfortunately, looking at the timing, it probably won't be in that condition by the 4th of July. I talked to the contractor this afternoon. He stated he's hoping to have the streets paved the last week in June, so hopefully we'll have the streets paved. We'll have curb and gutter back. He'll still have his staging area up and be cleaning up the project though around the 4th, so there will be portions of the park that still will be fenced off. So that will be the expectation in and around the 4th, and the project should be completed by about mid-July or so. So that's the update on B Street.
Excellent. Anything update on the dog park?
Dog park, and Ms. Scott can speak to this as well, is it did receive some press. So dog park, we did receive some donations recently in the dog park, but we still have not reached our funding goal, which I believe was set at about 30,000. Is that correct, Ms. Scott? And so we're really waiting on the construction, obviously, of the dog park until we have all of the funding. So hopefully B Street will be finished up. We'll still gather the funding. Once we have that funding in place, then we'll be ready to start construction.
Great. Any other projects you want to talk to us about, Mr. Weir?
Let's see, since the night is so early and we have so much time, I will just say that ICDBG for the fire hall, that bid's a week from tonight, so we will have costs in regard to that, and we'll give the council an update once we have those. But that project is progressing, and once we have that final piece in place, we'll be able to hopefully complete that in the fall.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Weir?
That is it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weir. Okay, so that was our city manager's report. All right, we're going to go into reports, concerns, referrals from council. Who'd like to start?
I can be fast.
All right, Mr. Short.
Just participated in our special meeting at the wastewater treatment plant with the interviews, taught Fire One Academy, and being it was kind of the end of the month, the meetings weren't so prolific, so that's about it for me. And I will not be here for the next city council meeting.
Oh, excellent, and that's a bummer. Okay, Catherine.
Thank you. Let's see, well, we've had I guess the LAFCO meeting on the 23rd, where we finally finished the MSRs for the Klamath area. And that earlier that day, I had the opportunity to attend a community input meeting at RHS for NORTEC, and learned a lot about what the Regional Workforce Development Strategic Planning Project is going to do. So that was really interesting. I appreciate being invited. Thank you, Scott et al. And then we had our budget workshop that evening. And then we had Memorial Weekend, and I went to Eureka and took flowers to everyone of my families from 4 generations down at Humboldt County. We had the first farmers market at the Downtown Divas on the 1st, and that was really fun. And we had an Airport Joint Powers Authority meeting on the 2nd, and then we had the city manager interviews on the 3rd, which lasted all day. And here we are tonight. And remember to vote tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hawley.
Thank you. Of course, I went to the special meeting where we did the interviews. Also went to the Veterans Memorial Services, and I thought that was, I had not done that before. And that was really beautifully done, and it was really moving. So I was glad I had a chance to do that. I did spend a few minutes downtown for the 50th anniversary of the pool. I wanted to see what it was like to do the marathon, and I went and saw what they were doing in the cultural center. And it wasn't a huge turnout, but it sure looked like they had a lot going on. So I thank all the volunteers for that. The other thing I did was went on a fly fishing trip and didn't catch a fish. Did not. I had a fly, and another fly showed interest in it, but no fish did. So it was humiliating.
Oh, but that was a better day than any day at work, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Mr. Idscore.
Yeah, all right. We had a Solid Waste Management Authority meeting, Chamber Board meeting. I was on vacation the 18th through the 25th. I went to Georgia. My nephew just retired from 23 years of service in the United States Navy, so it was an honor to be able to attend his retirement. Also got to take a trip out through the Okefenokee Swamp and get up and close personal with an alligator, for whatever that's worth. Participated in the Interfaith Council along with some other partner volunteers in the cleanup at the cemetery, and I just want to say to all the people who helped with that, what a difference it made for the memorial service on Monday. And thank you so much to the volunteers who came out and helped from all different agencies, different faith groups, everybody working together. It's been a long time since I'd run a weed eater for 6 straight hours. I know that, but we got hot dogs at noon, so I was ready to go again. The Memorial Day service was very nice. It's something I look forward to every year. Attended the Find Your Park meeting with Ms. Scott as we continue to prepare for this fabulous event, first-time event, hopefully going to be an annual event on Labor Day weekend here. You need to put that on your calendar. Go to our webpage and look up Find Your Park. I didn't get to attend the budget workshop, but I got a briefing from our city manager and a finance director, and that was very helpful, and I appreciate them carving out time for me. And participated in the interviews on Friday, and this morning I got to participate at Joe Hamilton School as part of the Safe Routes to Schools program with a bike rodeo, and had a blast spending almost 3 hours with the kids this morning on bicycles, and was somewhat surprised of the number of children who, number one, don't have a bicycle, and number two, have not had an opportunity to ride a bicycle. I just found that very interesting, and some of these children just had a blast this morning having an opportunity to ride a bicycle. That's something I think, we lose sight of. With all this stuff and millions of dollars in the budget and all these tough decisions and how are we going to allocate these funds and how are we going to do what we need to do, every now and then I think each and every one of us, especially those of us who are elected to office, ought to spend some time with a child helping them ride a bicycle, because that really shows you what public service is really all about. And so thank you, Amber Weir, for inviting me and for others who participated. it was an honor to serve. So that's mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot we're going all the way back to our last city council meeting. We did that solid waste meeting, Redwood Transit Authority, at the district employee dinner, the 19th was nice. My wife got a 25-year badge for being in the school district, and she is making sure that I stay sane in my teaching career as we go forward. Did the city budget workshop, great Memorial Day, awesome weather. I ordered that up as mayor, thank you very much. And then I did the interviews with everybody else for the city manager, and then on Saturday there was so much going on in Crescent City. I went down to the Promoter Pool to check it out, and like you said, there wasn't many people, but it looks like they were having a great time down there, and hopefully they got some good fundraising down there. Then I was going out towards the fairgrounds, and I stopped by the Crescent City Farmers Market first time, and it was packed. I probably wouldn't have stopped if I didn't see the abandoned kettle corn sign out front, where I bought lots of caramel corn that I have to hide from my children. And then also at the same time, they're doing the Delaware Health Fair. So, I mean, if you think there's nothing to do in Crescent City on a weekend, you're sadly mistaken, because you can hit the beach, you can hit the farmer's market. Well, hit the farmer's market first, then go to the beach. And it's definitely a great time. And so as we say goodbye to this Monday night and then stretching it out to 9 o'clock, no, I'm going to get there. Make sure everybody gets out to vote tomorrow for our primaries. Make your decisions of how our community is going to be led in the next 4 years and more. And everybody have a great night, and we are adjourned.